Some places frighten people because they are abandoned. Broken windows, rotting floors, rust growing through the walls. No lights, no guests, no one left to remember what happened there. But some places are more frightening because they never close. Rotting floors. They still have polished floors. They still have front desk smiles. They still have weddings in the ballroom, golf carts rolling over perfect grass, and guests dragging luggage across a lobby that smells of old wood, sea air, and expensive perfume. Seaview Hotel in Galloway, New Jersey is that kind of place. By daylight, it is almost too beautiful to suspect. A historic white resort near Reeds Bay, not far from Atlantic City, classic architecture, wide lawns, golf courses shaped by wind, salt, and memory. A place that looks as if every dark corner has been cleaned, painted, and quietly forgiven. But people who work overnight at Seaview will tell you something different. They will tell you that history does not leave a building just because the walls are repainted. It only changes rooms. Seaview Hotel and Golf Club is located at 401 South New York Road, Galloway, New Jersey. It is a historic resort near Atlantic City, connected to a golf tradition that spans more than a century. The hotel and golf club opened in 1914. It has two well-known courses, the Bay Course and the Pines Course. The property sits on about 670 acres, overlooking Reeds Bay. One very strong real milestone to include in the story is the 1942 PGA Championship at Seaview. That was where Sam Snead won the first major of his career. Seaview is also connected with LPGA events and with urban legends about elevators moving by themselves, the basement, the third floor, and ghost stories passed down by Stockton students during the period when the school owned the property. Seaview Hotel, the haunted resort. My name is Evan Miller. I was not a ghost hunter. I was not a paranormal investigator. I did not believe in voices through disconnected phones or footsteps in sealed hallways. I was a freelance videographer from Philadelphia. Weddings, restaurant ads, real estate tours, short historical promos. That was my work. A small media company hired me to film a short feature about Seaview. The brief was simple. A century of elegance beside the Jersey Shore. Shoot the front entrance. Shoot the ballroom. Shoot the golf courses. Interview the manager. Capture sunrise over the bay. Deliver the files in 5 days. Nothing strange. Nothing dangerous. Nothing that should have followed me home. I arrived late on a Thursday afternoon in October. The sky was low and gray. The kind of coastal sky that makes every building look older than it is. When I turned onto South New York Road and saw the hotel beyond the trees, I had this strange feeling that I was not arriving somewhere new. I was returning to a place that had been waiting. The lobby was warm, quiet, and immaculate. Thick carpet swallowed the sound of my equipment cases. A chandelier glowed over dark wood. Somewhere beyond the bar, glasses clicked softly, and outside, wind moved across the bay. The woman at the front desk looked up before I gave my name. Evan Miller? That's me. I'm Mara. You'll be in room 314. She slid a key card across the counter. Under it was a small brass key tied to a strip of white cloth. Not a modern hotel key. An old one, heavy, dull, and cold. I picked it up before she could stop me. Stamped into the metal was one number, 315. Mara's face changed, only for a second. Then her hand moved quickly, and the key was gone. "I'm sorry," she said. "That was not supposed to be there." I smiled, because at that point I still thought this was ordinary. An old hotel, a misplaced antique key, a tired clerk on a long shift. I took my card, carried my cases to the elevator, and rode up to the third floor. I did not know then that Seaview had already chosen my room. I did not know that room 314 was not beside room 315. It was beside the place where room 315 had once been. The third floor was quieter than any hotel floor I had ever walked through. Not empty, not abandoned, just quiet in a way that seemed deliberate, as if the hallway knew how to absorb sound. The carpet was deep. The lamps were gold and dim. Framed prints of the bay hung between white doors with small brass numbers. 310, 312, 314. My room faced a painting of Reed's Bay at sunset. Inside, everything looked normal. A king bed, a desk, a window looking toward the golf course, and a dark line of trees. I unpacked my cameras, charged batteries, and checked the shooting schedule. Day 1, exterior, lobby, and evening atmosphere. Day 2, manager interview and bay course. Day 3, architectural details, sunrise, hallways, and final inserts. By 6, I was outside filming the hotel from the lawn. The building glowed white under the bruised sky. Flags moved slowly in the wind. Golf carts rolled in from the course. A couple in evening clothes hurried under the portico as the first rain began to fall. The shots were beautiful, too beautiful maybe. I came back inside around 7. Mara was still at the desk, now with a paper cup of coffee and the expression of someone who had already been awake too long. "Good first day?" she asked. "Good footage," I said. "Tomorrow I need some older sections of the hotel. Anything still close to the original design?" She glanced toward the elevator. "Parts of the third floor. My floor. Yes. What about room 315? The lobby seemed to go still around her. "That room is not used for guests. Under renovation?" "Not exactly." Before I could ask what that meant, a sound came from the elevators. A small, clean bell. The doors opened. No one came out. Inside the empty elevator, the floor indicator blinked one letter. B. The basement. Mara looked at it, and for the first time since I arrived, I saw fear on her face. Not surprise, not confusion. Fear mixed with exhaustion, as if the elevator had done that before. As if she had hoped it would not do it while I was standing there. That first night, I woke at 2:47 in the morning. Rain tapped the window. The room was dark except for the gray glow behind the curtains. For a moment, I did not know what had woken me. Then I heard it again. Click. A key turning in a lock. Not my door, the door beside mine. I got out of bed and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. I opened the door a few inches. Cold air slid into my room. To my right was the door marked 315. No light under it. No do not disturb sign. No cleaning cart. Just a closed door in a hallway that felt too long. Then the knocking started. From inside room 315. I stood there barefoot, unable to move. At the end of the hall, the elevator bell rang. Ting, the doors opened. Empty again. The indicator said B. I closed my door and locked it. Then I pushed a chair against it, like a child afraid of the dark. I told myself it was plumbing, old wood, a guest in another room, an elevator malfunction. But old pipes do not knock 3 times from inside a room that no one is supposed to use. The next morning, I met Caleb. He was the kind of maintenance man every old hotel seems to have. Thin, gray-haired, slightly bent at the shoulders, with a ring of keys heavy enough to pull his belt down. He caught me filming the carved banister near the main staircase and watched me for a while before speaking. "You making the hotel look pretty?" "Trying to." "Don't make it too pretty." I lowered the camera. "Why not?" "Because then more people come." He did not smile when he said it. I introduced myself. He shook my hand and asked which room I had. 314. His eyes went to the ceiling. "You sleep all right?" "Not really." He nodded as if I had confirmed something. "You heard the elevator." I did not answer. "It likes the basement," he said. "Nobody calls it. Nobody presses the button. It goes down there anyway. Technicians checked it for years. No fault, no pattern, just the basement." "And 315?" I asked. The keys at Caleb's hip stopped moving. "You asked Mara about that?" "I heard knocking. 3 knocks." I said nothing. Caleb sighed. "Listen to me. Shoot the lobby. Shoot the golf course. Shoot the old pictures on the walls if you want. Then go home. Don't turn this place into cheap ghost content." "I'm not here to hunt ghosts." "Good," he said. "Then don't go looking for what is hiding." That sentence stayed with me all day. Not what is haunting, not what is dead, what is hiding. The manager interview was filmed in a bright conference room overlooking the course. Daniel Price wore a navy suit and spoke in the smooth voice of a man who had given the same answer many times. "Seaview is more than a hotel," he said into the camera. "It is a living piece of Jersey Shore history. Families, business leaders, athletes, and travelers have come here for generations." He talked about the golf courses, the Bay Course, the Pines Course, the wind coming off Reed's Bay. He talked about the PGA Championship in 1942 and how legendary players had walked the same grounds my camera was now filming. "Those stories give the property its soul," he said. Soul. I remember the word because of what happened next. After we finished, I asked casually, "Do you ever do night history tours?" His smile stayed in place, but his eyes changed. "We don't encourage that. Because of the stories, every old hotel has stories. Elevators that run by themselves, sensor issues, third floor knocking." He stopped packing the microphone. "Who told you that?" "No one had to." Daniel set the microphone on the table. "Evan, your contract is for a historical resort video, not an investigation. I'm just curious." "Curiosity," he said, "is a polite word for stepping over a line." I asked him if room 315 had a guest. He looked at me and said, "No." "Then who knocked from inside it at 3 in the morning?" For the first time, Daniel Price had no prepared answer. That afternoon, I went out to film the Bay Course. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray and low. Wind pushed across the fairways, flattening the grass in waves. Near one of the paths, an older woman sat on a bench, her hands folded over the head of a cane. "You're filming Seaview," she said. "Yes, ma'am. Don't film it from too far away." I smiled. "Why?" "Because from a distance you can see things that are not standing near you." Her name, she told me, was Helen Ward. She had been a Stockton student years earlier when the property was connected to the university. Some students had stayed on site. Some loved the history, some did not. "Did you know about room 315?" I asked. Helen looked toward the hotel. 315 is not the frightening room. Then what is? She tapped her cane once against the path. The space between rooms. She told me old buildings are rewritten over time. Walls get covered. Doors get sealed. Hallways are bent to match new plans. Sometimes, after enough renovations, a building keeps spaces that no longer appear on any map. Then she told me about a night in October when she was a student. She had opened her door after hearing the elevator at 3 in the morning. Inside the elevator stood a young man in a white shirt and dark pants. His hair was wet, as if he had just come in from the rain. He looked at her and asked, "Have you seen my key?" Helen shut her door and did not open it again until morning. When she told a housekeeper, the woman said only this: "If he asks for the key, don't answer. If you answer, he knows you can hear him." I asked Helen if she thought the young man was a ghost. At the time, yes, she said. And now? Her fingers tightened around the cane. Now I think he was someone the hotel kept too long. That evening, I reviewed my footage in room 314. The shots were clean, the front entrance in rain, the golf course under gray light, the lobby glowing like a memory. Then I noticed the window. In a wide shot of the hotel exterior, a figure stood behind a third-floor curtain. I zoomed in, the image broke into pixels, but the shape remained. A young man in a white shirt, still watching. I checked the angle against the floor map in my production packet. The figure was not in room 314, not in room 315. He stood at a window between them, a window that did not exist. At the 12th second of the clip, the figure turned his head toward the camera. Then my laptop went black. The room lights died. Rain tapped against the glass. From the hallway came 3 knocks. I did not open the door. Then the room phone rang. I stared at it until the 4th ring, then lifted the receiver. No one spoke at first, only wind. Distant wind, as if it were blowing across an empty fairway in another decade. Then a young male voice whispered through the line, "Have you seen my key?" I dropped the receiver. The lights came back. My laptop restarted. The entire folder of footage from that day was gone. All that remained was one new file with no title, no thumbnail, and 0 kilobytes. Its creation time was 3:15 a.m., but the clock on the wall said 11:42 p.m. I went downstairs to find Mara. She was alone at the front desk. When she saw my face, she did not ask what happened. "You heard him," she said. "He called my room. Did you answer him?" I didn't say anything. "Good. Good? Mara, what is going on here?" She opened a drawer beneath the counter and removed a thin folder of photocopied pages. "You should not see this, but if you saw the window, it may already be too late." Inside were old renovation plans, maintenance notes, incident reports, and copied floor diagrams. One page showed the 3rd floor before a major renovation. Between rooms 314 and 315 was a small space marked in pencil, 3rd floor service hold. "A storage room?" I asked. "Maybe," Mara said, "or a staff room, or part of an old service corridor. The records don't agree." "Why seal it?" She turned to another page. Most lines had been blacked out, but I could read a few phrases. October 17th. Unregistered male guest. Key recovered. Basement access. No public record requested. Someone died? I asked. No one says that. Someone disappeared? No one says that either. Then what do they say? Mara looked toward the elevator. They say the hotel handled it. After midnight, Caleb came to my room. He knocked twice fast, then once slowly. Not 3 even knocks, not that pattern. He carried a brown envelope. Inside were old security stills from 2012. A college student in a hoodie stood in the 3rd floor hallway, facing the wall between 314 and 315. His name was Noah Bell, Caleb said. Stockton student, smart kid, too curious. The next still showed Noah touching the wall. The next showed the elevator opening. The last showed the hallway empty. He vanished? I asked. Not officially. What does that mean? Family said he left school. School said he withdrew. Police had no body, no crime scene, no case. You don't believe that? Caleb pulled out one more photograph. A backpack lay on wet concrete beside a metal basement door. On top of it was a brass key stamped 315. I found his bag, Caleb said. Downstairs, 3 days after he disappeared. I asked who the young man in the white shirt was. Caleb looked out the window toward the dark golf course. During the 1942 championship, this place was full of people whose names made the papers, he said. Golfers, reporters, rich guests, but places like this also run on people no one remembers. Bellhops, caddies, shoe boys, kitchen staff, boys who carried luggage for men who never learned their names. You think he was one of them? I think he saw something he was never supposed to see. What? Caleb's voice dropped. A secret that the hotel protected better than it protected him? I should have left that night. Any reasonable person would have packed the cameras, called the company, invented an emergency, and driven back to Philadelphia before sunrise. But fear is not the only thing that keeps people in haunted places. Sometimes it is guilt. Sometimes it is the feeling that someone has been waiting a long time for a witness. The next morning, I tried to find Helen Ward. She was not on the bench near the course, not in the lobby, not in the restaurant. No one had seen an older woman with a cane. I called Stockton and asked carefully about a former student named Helen Ward who had once stayed at Seaview. The person on the phone could not give me much, but she did confirm one thing. Helen Ward had died in 2019. I stood in the lobby with my phone in my hand. Across the room, Mara watched me. She already knew. You've seen her too, I said. Mara nodded. My first night on desk. What did she say? She told me never to give anyone the key to 315. Then why was it on my key card? Mara's eyes filled with dread. Because I didn't put it there. That afternoon, Daniel Price told me I had enough footage. He said the hotel could supply promotional shots for anything missing. He said my work was done. I need to film the basement, I told him. No, then I need to know what happened in the sealed room. Daniel shut his office door. When he turned back, the manager's smile was gone. You think you're the first person who heard knocking? He asked. People hear things, they see things. They dig through records and tell themselves they will be the one to solve it. They never are. Noah Bell tried. Daniel's face hardened. Caleb talks too much. Where is Noah? No one knows. Do you? Daniel opened a drawer and removed a small USB drive. He placed it on the edge of his desk. I am not giving you this, he said. And I am not telling you to leave before midnight. The file on the drive was 7 minutes and 15 seconds long. Security camera. Third floor, October 17th, 2012, 3:12 a.m. Noah Bell entered the frame wearing a hoodie and carrying a backpack. He moved toward the wall between rooms 314 and 315 using his phone as a flashlight. For a full minute, nothing happened. Then the elevator opened at the end of the hall. No one stepped out. But something fell from inside the empty elevator. Noah went to it and picked it up. A brass key. He returned to the wall. A black line appeared where solid plaster had been a second earlier. A door seam. Noah inserted the key and turned it. The wall opened. Behind it was a narrow, dark room. Noah looked back at the camera. His mouth moved. There was no audio. Then he stepped inside. The door closed. The camera glitched. When the image returned, the hallway was empty. At the very end of the file, the elevator opened again. A young man stepped out. White shirt, dark pants, wet hair. Not Noah. He looked straight into the camera. Then the screen went black. The room phone rang behind me. I did not answer. It rang 12 times, then stopped. After that, the knocking came from the hallway. I picked up my camera and opened the door. The third floor hallway was empty, but between rooms 314 and 315, the wall had a thin black seam. On the carpet at my feet lay a brass key. The number stamped into it was 315. I wish I could tell you I left it there. I wish I could tell you I was smarter than that. But stories do not choose witnesses because they are smart. They choose the ones who bend down. I picked up the key. and the wall opened. The hidden room was narrow, windowless, and colder than the hallway. There was no bed, no furniture, no modern wiring except a dead bulb hanging from the ceiling. Dust covered the floor in a smooth gray skin, except for a few places where footprints had disturbed it. I raised my camera light. The walls were covered in scratches, names, dates, short messages carved into the wood. Noah was here. Don't answer the phone. The hotel opens only for those who look back. In one corner sat a small wooden chest. Inside were objects that had no reason to be together: a student ID, a wedding photograph stained brown at the edges, an old coin, a yellowed golf ball, a pocket watch that had stopped at 3:15, and dozens of brass keys, every one stamped with the same number, 3:15. Beneath them was a small leather notebook. The first page read Property Log, Service Hold, 1942. At first, the entries were ordinary: lost gloves, spare room keys, staff items, maintenance notes. Then the handwriting changed, sharper, faster, afraid. May 31st, 1942. The boy says he saw Mr. H in the basement with the guest from Philadelphia. Do not let him speak to reporters. He has the spare key. Find it before morning. The next page read, he refuses to hand over the key, says he hid the record in the third floor hold. Manager orders the area locked until guests depart. The page after that was half torn away. Only one sentence remained. The knocking continued after midnight. Behind me, a voice said, "You found it?" I turned so fast the camera light hit the doorway. The young man in the white shirt stood there. He looked 17, maybe 18. Wet dark hair, pale face, eyes much older than his body. "Who are you?" I whispered. He looked at the notebook in my hand, the one who kept the key. "Did you die here?" He tilted his head. "No." That answer was worse than yes. "Then what are you?" "Someone who stayed too long." "What do you want from me?" "Return the names." "Whose names?" He looked around the room. Everyone the hotel took after me. From the hallway came the elevator bell. "Team." The boy looked past me. "It is going to the basement." "What is?" He did not answer. Instead, he said, "Do not let the manager close the door again." Then the lights in the hallway went out. I ran with the notebook in my hands. Behind me, the hidden door shut without a sound, and the wall became smooth again. At the end of the hall, the elevator stood open. Its interior was bright, sterile, and empty. The indicator showed B. Then Daniel stepped out. His suit was wrinkled, his face was white. "Give me the book, Evan. You know what this is." "I know enough to know you should not have opened that room." "What happened to the boy in 1942? Daniel came closer. "Do you think a building like this survives 100 years without secrets?" "What happened?" "A mistake," he said. "A very old mistake." Behind him, inside the elevator, another figure appeared. A college student in a hoodie, backpack on one shoulder, face hidden in shadow. Noah Bell. Daniel did not see him. Noah lifted one finger to his lips. Then he whispered, "Don't answer." The phone in my room began to ring, even though the door was closed, even though I was standing in the hallway. The sound came through the walls, loud and clean. Daniel turned toward it. In that instant, Noah disappeared. Daniel lunged for the notebook. I stepped back and tripped. The notebook fell open on the carpet. The page was dated October 17th, 2018. The handwriting was recent, price agreed. Room must remain sealed before sale closes. No more incidents before transfer. I looked at Daniel. His face told me everything. "You helped cover it up," I said. "No one died," he snapped. All the doors on the third floor knocked at once. Daniel's voice broke. No one died, he said again. They just never left. Caleb found me in the emergency stairwell. I do not remember how I got there. I only remember the knocking following me down, floor by floor, like the hotel had knuckles inside every wall. He pulled me into a maintenance room near the basement. Mara was already there. She locked the door, turned off the overhead light, and left only a small desk lamp burning. I put the notebook on the table. Caleb opened it with shaking hands. When he read the page from 2018, he closed his eyes. Daniel knew, Mara said. So did others, Caleb answered. Maybe not all of it, but enough. I told them what I had seen in the hidden room. The names, the keys, the boy in the white shirt. Thomas Riley, Caleb said. You know him? My grandfather worked here. He told stories about a bellhop in 1942, 17 years old. Poor kid, smart, always listening, always trying to learn how rich men talked. What did he see? Mara asked. A basement exchange, Caleb said. Money, favors, maybe wartime information. My grandfather never knew exactly, but the boy took a record, a notebook, something that could have ruined important men. So they locked him in the service hold, I said. Caleb nodded. They meant to scare him, keep him quiet until the guests left. But a storm hit that night. Power failed. By morning, the door was gone. Gone. They broke open the wall. There was no room behind it, just solid framing. No boy, no notebook, nothing. The desk lamp flickered. Somewhere below us, a bell rang. Not a phone, not an elevator, an old service bell. Mara stood. It's calling from the basement. Caleb looked at the door. No one should be down there, but we all knew we were going, because if we did not, the story would not end. And by then, I had begun to understand something terrible. The hotel wanted an ending too. The basement was not like a horror movie. No candles, no blood, no stone tunnels. At first, it was only pipes, machines, shelves, cleaning supplies, and the wet metal smell of a working building. But the farther Caleb led us, the older it became. The ceiling lowered. The paint gave way to old brick. The fluorescent lights buzzed and blinked. At the end of a corridor stood a metal door. The same door from the photograph of Noah's backpack. Caleb tried every key on his ring. None worked. Mara looked at me. I already knew. I took the brass key marked 315 from my pocket. It slid into the lock. It turned easily. The room beyond was an old storage space. Wooden shelves, broken chairs, crates of hotel signs, a box of brass room numbers. At the far wall stood a large mirror covered by a white sheet. Behind us, the elevator bell rang. King. Caleb froze. The elevator does not come to this section. At the end of the basement corridor, the elevator doors stood open. The indicator showed 3. It wants us upstairs, Mara whispered. I looked at the covered mirror. No, I said. It wants us to look. I pulled the sheet down. At first, the old glass reflected only us. Me, Mara, Caleb, pale under the basement light. Then the reflection changed. Behind us, in the mirror, was the 3rd floor hallway. Room 314, room 315, the open space between them, and inside that space stood people. Noah Bell, Helen Ward, young again. Others I did not know. Men, women, students, staff, guests, all crowded into a room that should not exist. In front of them stood the boy in the white shirt. His voice filled the storage room without moving his lips. Read the names. Caleb understood first. He opened the notebook to the scratched list of names copied from the hidden room. If we read them, Mara said, what happens? No one answered, because none of us knew whether we were freeing them or opening the door wider. Before I could begin, Daniel stepped out of the elevator. He was holding a fire extinguisher in both hands as if it were a weapon. His face was wet with sweat. "Don't," he said. Mara looked at him. "Daniel, let it end." "You don't understand," he said. "If this gets out, the hotel dies." Caleb stepped forward. "This hotel has lived by swallowing people long enough." Daniel lifted the extinguisher. "I won't let you destroy everything for names no one remembers." In the mirror, the boy in the white shirt looked directly at Daniel. For the first time, he smiled. Not cruelly, sadly, as if he had finally found the person he needed. Daniel's cell phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Mara whispered, "Do not answer." But terrified people often do exactly what they are warned not to do. Daniel lifted the phone to his ear. "Hello?" The voice from the phone was young, calm, close enough for all of us to hear. "Have you seen my key?" The mirror shook. A crack ran across the silver glass. Inside the reflection, the third-floor hallway stretched longer and longer, farther than any building could contain. Every door opened. Hands appeared on the frames. Daniel backed away. "I didn't do what happened in 1942. The boy's voice came from the mirror. "No, but you kept the door shut." Daniel ran toward the elevator. The doors opened before he reached it. But inside was not an elevator cabin. It was the third-floor hallway. Daniel stopped, too late. A hand reached from the dark and seized his wrist. He screamed once. Then he was pulled inside. The elevator doors closed. The indicator flashed between B and 3, over and over, faster and faster. Then it went dark. No one moved. Then Caleb placed the notebook in my hands. "Read," he said. So I read. "Noah Bell." In the mirror, the student in the hoodie lifted his head. For a second, I saw his face clearly. Young, frightened, relieved. Then he faded like breath on glass. Helen Ward, the young woman from the mirror, smiled. Not the tired smile of the old woman on the bench, but the bright smile of someone who had finally reached the door. Then she was gone. I read every name I could make out. Some were clear, some were broken by time. Some I had to guess from scratched initials and half-carved letters. With each name, another figure vanished from the hidden room. A bride with rain in her hair, a man in a kitchen apron, a student with a camera, a night clerk, a caddy holding a yellowed golf ball. Finally, only the boy in the white shirt remained. I looked at Caleb. His name. Caleb swallowed. Thomas Riley. I faced the mirror. Thomas Riley. Nothing happened. I read it again. Thomas Riley. The boy shook his head. That was the name they gave me. Caleb whispered. My grandfather said that was his name. Maybe, Mara said softly. It wasn't his real one. I searched the notebook again. Front page, back page, torn page, margins. Then I found a folded piece of paper tucked into the inside cover. It was old, brittle, and written in a careful young hand. My mother says I must use a name they can pronounce. But my real name is Thomas Rios. One day, I will write it on a door of my own. I looked up at the mirror. The boy was no longer frightening. He was just young, a child who had been called the wrong name for more than 80 years. I said it carefully. Thomas Rios. The mirror split from top to bottom. A sound like ocean wind rushed through the basement. I heard rain from 1942. I heard golf applause from a vanished crowd. I heard a boy knocking from inside a sealed wall. Thomas smiled. Then he was gone. The mirror shattered. The lights went out. Morning came as if nothing had happened. That was the worst part. No police tape, no alarms, no guests running from the lobby. Breakfast was served. Golf carts rolled past the windows. A bride laughed with her bridesmaids near the ballroom. Seaview looked clean, bright, and respectable, like a place that had never taken anyone. Daniel Price was said to have left for personal reasons. Mara quit before the end of the week. Caleb retired 2 weeks later. No public report mentioned the basement mirror. No one mentioned the hidden room. No one mentioned the names. I finished the resort video using only daylight footage. I did not include the third floor. I did not include the basement. I did not include the hidden room, even though the footage survived. I watched it once. Only once. In the recording, when I read the name Thomas Rios, the camera turned toward the mirror just as it cracked. For 1 second, I saw all of them walking out of the third floor hallway. Noah, Ellen, the bride, the clerk, the caddy, the strangers whose names had been carved into wood because no record had kept them. All of them left, except one. Daniel stood at the far end of the hallway in his navy suit, holding a phone to his ear. When the others disappeared, he remained. Then he turned toward the camera. His mouth moved. I did not turn on the audio. I did not need to. I knew what he was asking. Have you seen my key? I deleted the file. I deleted it from the drive, from the memory card, and from the trash. Then I left Seaview before sunset. For 3 months, nothing happened. I convinced myself the story was over. I told myself Thomas was free. Noah was free. Helen was free. Whatever had lived inside Seaview had finally gone quiet. Then a brown envelope arrived at my apartment in Philadelphia. No return address. No stamp I recognized. Inside was a photograph of Seaview at night. The portico lights were glowing. The flags were still. The third floor was dark except for one window. A man stood behind the glass. Daniel. On the back of the photo, someone had written one sentence. The room is open, but the hotel still needs someone to keep the key. Taped beneath the sentence was a brass key. I expected it to say 315. It did not. It said 314. My room. That night, at 3:15 in the morning, a phone rang in my apartment. I live alone. I do not own a landline, but the ringing came from my living room. I walked out and found an old black hotel phone sitting on the table. Its cord was not plugged into anything. It kept ringing. I remembered Mara. Do not answer. I remembered Helen. If he asks for the key, do not answer. I remembered Tomas and the way he looked when I spoke his real name. And then I understood the final truth Seaview had kept from me. Tomas had not been haunting the hotel. He had been guarding the door. The hungry thing was not a ghost, not the hidden room, not the elevator. It was the hotel itself, a place that had learned to survive by feeding on memory. And when I read the names, I had not destroyed it. I had only made it empty. Hungry again, the phone kept ringing. I did not pick it up, but from the disconnected receiver, a voice came through anyway. Not Daniel's, not Thomas's. Mine. Small, distant, trapped behind a wall that should not exist. Have you seen my key? I looked down. The brass key marked 314 was in my hand. I did not remember picking it up. Then someone knocked on my apartment door. 3 slow knocks. And this time, the hallway outside my door smelled like old wood, rainwater, and salt from Reed's Bay. And that was the story of Seaview Hotel, the haunted resort by Reed's Bay. A place where history still walks the hallways, where old doors may not stay closed, and where some keys should never be picked up. If this story kept you listening until the very end, leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more dark stories inspired by real places, forgotten legends, and the strange corners of American history. And before you go, tell me in the comments. If a hotel phone rang in your room at 3:15 in the morning and the cord was not plugged into anything, would you answer it? Until the next story, keep your door locked, keep the lights low, and never trust a key that finds its way into your hand.
Some houses do not need to lock their doors. They only need to stay silent. Silent long enough for people to forget that someone once lived inside them. Someone once ran through their halls. Someone once gave orders. Someone once bowed their head and answered them. And someone once disappeared without leaving a single name in the official history. In Washington, D.C., not far from the White House, there is an 8-sided house at the corner of New York Avenue and 18th Street. By day, it is a historic site, a federal-style landmark, a stop on historical tours, a place where people talk about President James Madison, Dolly Madison, the Treaty of Ghent, and the months when the capital of the United States still smelled of smoke after war had passed through it. But at night, Octagon House has footsteps. Not the sound of old wood shrinking in the cold. Not old pipes. Not a security guard making his rounds. Footsteps. Slow. Even. Heavy enough to feel intentional. They rise from the basement, move through the round hall, climb the main staircase, and stop outside the room where Madison once signed the document that ended a war. Then they go back down. Every night. 8 rounds. No more. No less. And the strangest part is this. No one had ever seen who was walking. Octagon House is a real historic building at 1799, New York Avenue Northwest, Washington, D.C. It was designed by Dr. William Thornton, the first architect of the United States Capitol. The house became the temporary residence of President James Madison and First Lady Dolly Madison after British forces burned the White House, the Capitol, and several public buildings in Washington on August 24, 1814. The Madisons moved into Octagon House on September 8, 1814. There, on February 17, 1815, Madison signed the Treaty of Ghent, the document that ended the War of 1812. Octagon House is also associated with many ghost legends involving its curved staircase, invisible footsteps, servant bells, and shadowy figures said to appear inside the house. These legends are not verified historical events, but they make a strong foundation for a horror story based on a real place. One interesting detail is that the structure includes both an elegant main staircase and a separate service staircase leading down to the basement, reflecting the social separation between the owner's spaces and the servants' spaces of that period. Maya Tran did not believe in ghosts. She believed in sound. She was 29, lived alone in Arlington, and worked as a freelance audio technician for museums, history podcasts, and small documentary projects. Her job was to step into old rooms, set up microphones, measure reverberation, record room tone, and turn silence into data. She had recorded inside abandoned churches, closed theaters, and used hospital wings, library basements, and once, in the middle of winter, inside a cemetery, just to capture the way wind moved between stone markers. To Maya, every sound had a source. A knock inside a wall was a mouse. A whisper was air slipping through a crack. Footsteps above a ceiling were old beams expanding and settling. She liked to tell people, there are no haunted houses. There are only old houses, and people who have heard too many stories. That February, Maya accepted a short contract from an audio documentary team. They were producing a special episode about Octagon House for the anniversary of the signing of the Treaty of Ghent. Her task sounded simple. She would enter Octagon House after closing, place several recorders overnight, and return the next morning to collect the memory cards. Then she would clean the audio, mark unusual sounds, and deliver a folder of usable material. They did not ask her to prove the house was haunted. They only wanted atmosphere. A little creak of wood. A little air moving through a hallway. A little sense that history was still breathing somewhere behind the walls. Maya accepted immediately. The pay was not much, but the name Octagon House was interesting enough. Besides, she liked places other people were afraid of. Not because she was brave. Because those places were usually quiet. And quiet was the rarest thing in Washington. The museum contact was Claire Whitman, a woman in her 50s with short silver hair, a tall frame, and a voice so soft it sounded as if she were afraid of waking something inside the house. Claire met Maya at the side entrance late in the afternoon. "Have you ever been here before?" Claire asked. "No," Maya said. "I read the materials." "Then I should warn you. The house is easier during the day." Maya smiled. That does not sound like a museum introduction. Claire did not smile back. Outside, sunset slid across the red brick face of Octagon House. Because the walls did not meet in ordinary right angles, the building seemed to turn slightly in place, as if it were not fully still. Inside, Maya noticed the sound first. The round hall pulled voices toward the center, then gave them back with a soft, short echo, almost like a breath. Footsteps did not travel in a straight line. They curved along the walls, slipped into the staircase, and fell somewhere behind the listener. Maya stopped at the foot of the main staircase. It was elegant, curved, and strangely beautiful, the kind of staircase that belonged in portraits and state dinners. But beneath the first steps, darkness had already gathered. The polished handrail ended in a heavy newel post. Near its base, under a small protective cover, sat a tiny ivory-colored button. "The Amity button," Claire said. Maya leaned closer. "A button?" "A small button set into the stair post when the owner and builder finished the work in friendship. A kind of seal. As if the house was born in agreement." Maya looked at the little button. "That's actually beautiful." Claire answered quietly, "Yes." But not everyone who lived in this house was asked whether they agreed. Maya looked up. Claire did not explain. She only led Maya through the main rooms. The parlor. The dining room. The back hallway. The service stair. The way down to the basement. The basement was colder than the rest of the house. Not cold like air conditioning. Cold like old dampness clinging to the wrists. Maya pressed a hand against the brick wall. Audio will be good down here. Claire looked at her. Be careful where you leave a microphone in this basement. Why? Sometimes a recorder left down here captures sounds from upstairs. Maya laughed under her breath. Sound traveling through pipes. Old buildings do that. Maybe, Claire said. She handed Maya a set of keys. At 10, the security system switches to night mode. You can move through the opened areas. Do not enter the rear archive. Do not open artifact cases. Do not touch documents on display. And if you hear the bell... Claire stopped. Maya turned to her. The bell? The house once had a servant bell system. Some wires no longer work. Some bells were removed. But staff still hear one sometimes. Maya lifted her equipment bag. If it rings, I will record it. Claire watched her for a moment too long. That is exactly what worries me, she said. Maya began placing equipment at 7 that evening. One recorder in the round hall. One at the foot of the main staircase. One on the second floor, near the round room where Madison had worked. One in the back hallway. One smaller unit in the basement, near the service stairs. She used omnidirectional microphones, backup batteries, synchronized clocks, and a notebook full of careful marks. 8:14. Hall recorder active. 8:21. Main staircase recorder active. 8:37. Treaty room recorder active. 8:55. Basement recorder active. Outside, the city still glowed. Cars moved along New York Avenue. Brakes squealed somewhere in the distance. People laughed on the sidewalk. But inside Octagon House, those sounds passed through the thick walls and became a dull layer, like the memory of another city. Maya sat in the round hall, laptop open, checking levels. Everything looked normal. At 10:03 p.m., she heard the first footstep. Not in her headphones. Above her. Thump. 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 Maya looked up. The sound crossed the second floor toward the staircase, slow and weighted. She removed her headphones. Silence. Then again. Thump. 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 Claire? Maya called. No answer. Claire had left at 8:30. Security stayed in the newer building unless an alarm went off. Maya took a flashlight and climbed the stairs. The steps under her own feet creaked lightly, but the sound above was different. Firmer. More even. Like leather shoes on old boards. She reached the second floor. No one was there. The hallway was empty. The round room door stood slightly ajar. No curtains moved. No door had opened. Maya stood still for almost a minute. Then, from the basement, a bell rang. The sound was thin and distant, but clear enough to raise the hair on her arms. Ding. A second time. She went quickly down the stairs. At the round hall, she stopped. From the basement came the sound of footsteps. Slow. Even. Coming up. Maya stood at the bottom of the main staircase and looked toward the basement hall. The footsteps approached. Then they stopped just around the corner. "Is someone there?" she asked. No reply. She switched on her phone recorder, raised the flashlight, and stepped forward. The hallway was empty. The basement door remained open. Darkness lay below it like black water. Maya told herself that imagination had entered the job. She went down. The basement recorder was still running. Its tiny red light blinked. No person. No bell. No obvious source. She checked cables, batteries, and memory. Everything was normal. When she bent to lift her microphone case, a breath came through the headphones hanging around her neck. Very close. As if someone were standing beside the recorder upstairs. Maya froze. Then she put on the headphones. At first there was only room noise. Then a woman's voice, faint and broken, appeared beneath the static. Not words. A trembling breath, like someone trying not to cry. Maya ran to the second floor. The round room was empty. The recorder sat on the table, pointed toward the window. Its light blinked steadily. She rewound a few seconds. The voice was gone. Only static remained. Maya stood in the middle of the room, listening to her heart pound. Behind her, the floorboard made one sound. Thump. She turned. No one. Maya did not leave that night. Not because she was brave, but because she wanted to prove something simple. Every sound had a source. She sat in the round hall until morning, laptop open, one headphone on, watching the waveforms crawl across the screen. From 10:03 p.m. to 3:16 a.m., the footsteps appeared 8 times. Every time, they followed the same path. From the basement. Through the round hall. Up the main staircase. To the second floor. Around the round room. Then gone. 8 rounds. No more. No less. When Claire returned the next morning, Maya was sitting with bloodshot eyes in front of her laptop and a cup of staff room coffee. Claire looked at her. "You heard it." Maya turned the screen toward her. "I recorded it." On the screen, the audio displayed a row of evenly spaced peaks. Thump. 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 Adult footsteps, Maya said. Stable pace. Not cracking wood. Not heat. Not mice. Claire stared at the screen as if she had expected it. How many rounds? 8. Claire closed her eyes. Always 8. Maya leaned forward. You knew? Staff used to call it the 8th walk, Claire said. But nobody wants that in the official materials. Why not? Because a museum cannot advertise a haunting as fact. And because whenever someone tries to look too closely, they usually leave. Maya gave a dry laugh. That makes me more interested, not less. Claire sat across from her. Do you know why Madison used the round room upstairs? Proximity? Meetings? A good room for business? Partly. But people who worked in the house said that room heard everything. Maya frowned. You mean acoustically? I mean, sound does not move through this house the way people think it does. Claire handed her a cream-colored envelope. Inside were copies of an old letter, a few notes, and a floor plan. These are not on display, Claire said. You may read them here. Do not take them out. Maya opened the floor plan. From above, the house looked even stranger, rooms set at angles, staircases tucked into hidden paths, the main stair coiling like a question. Claire pointed to a narrow passage. This was service circulation. People moved through the house without guests seeing them. Maya traced the line from the basement toward the upper floors. It nearly matched the path of the footsteps. 8 rounds, Maya said. What does that mean? Some people think it represents the 8 sides of the house. And you? Claire looked toward the staircase. I think it represents 8 people. Maya looked up. People with no portraits, Claire said. No rooms named after them. No plaques. But people who knew every secret in the house. Maya remembered Claire's first warning. Not everyone in this house was asked whether they agreed. The footsteps no longer sounded like a random phenomenon. They sounded like work. Up and down. Answer the bell. Carry the tray. Build the fire. Listen, but do not speak. Be present, but never seen. Maya asked, What do you want me to do? Claire's face was still. I want you to find where the footsteps stop. Maya returned to Octagon House for a second night. This time, she did more than place recorders. She built a small tracking system, 3 directional microphones around the staircase, 2 boundary microphones in the round room, a contact mic under the table, and an infrared camera aimed down the hallway. She still did not believe in ghosts. But she had begun to believe Octagon House contained an acoustic secret she had not yet understood. At 9:48 p.m., the lights went out. At 10:03, the footsteps began. Maya sat in the staff room with headphones on. The infrared camera showed the second-floor hallway. Empty. But the audio said something was approaching. The door to the round room did not open. Still, the footsteps entered. In her headphones, Maya heard another sound. Cloth moving. Paper touching wood. A chair being pulled out gently. Then a man's voice, low and distant under the static. Is it done? Maya sat upright. She rewound immediately. Nothing. The voice had vanished from the working file. She checked the temporary buffer. Not there. It was as if the sound had passed only through her headphones, not into memory. She grabbed her flashlight and ran upstairs. The round room was dark. The table was empty. The windows were closed. No paper. No chair out of place. But in the thin dust near the table leg, something had scraped the floor. Not a footprint. A narrow line. It formed the number 8. Maya's phone vibrated. A message from Claire. Did you hear the voice? Maya stared at the screen. She had not told Claire anything. She typed back, You knew there would be a voice? 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. A minute later, Claire replied. Do not answer it. Before Maya could understand, the headphones lying on the table rang with the sound of a bell. They were not plugged into anything. Behind Maya, footsteps crossed the floor. Thump. 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 She did not turn around at first. For the first time in her life, Maya understood the feeling of knowing something was standing close behind you, and knowing that if you turned, everything would change. The steps stopped at her back. Cold breath touched her neck. A woman's voice whispered beside her ear. Not him. Maya turned. The hallway was empty. But dust along the floor had been disturbed in a long pale sweep, as if the hem of a dress had just passed by. The next morning, Maya did not go home. She sat in a coffee shop near Farragut West with her laptop open and searched every public record she could find about Octagon House. John Taylor III. And Ogle Taylor. James Madison. Dolly Madison. William Thornton. The Treaty of Ghent. The War of 1812. She read about the night the White House burned. About Dolly Madison saving the portrait of George Washington. About the Madisons moving into Octagon House. About the Round Room. About social dinners continuing while the Capitol still smelled of ash. Then she began looking for the smaller lines. Servants. Enslaved people. The people who lived and worked in the house but rarely appeared at the center of the story. There were scattered names. Harry. Winnie. A few notes. A few mentions of work. No portraits. No full biographies. No voices. Maya stopped on the name Winnie. In secondary materials and interpretive notes, she found references to people moved between Washington and Mount Airy in Virginia, people separated from their families, people whose labor kept the houses of the powerful running. Maya leaned back. She had worked on many history projects. The pattern was always the same. Powerful people left letters, portraits, signatures, and rooms named after them. The people who scrubbed floors, carried water, lit fires, answered bells, and heard the things no one else was supposed to hear left behind something else. Sound. She opened the previous night's files. At 10:03, footsteps. At 10:11, a bell. At 10:19, the scrape of a chair. She filtered the noise, reduced the low hum, and isolated a narrow band of frequencies. This time, a woman's voice appeared. Very small. Not fully clear. But Maya could hear 3 words. 8, not 1. She replayed it. 8, not 1. Maya wrote in her notebook. Not 1 ghost. 8 people? 8 rounds? 8 rooms? That afternoon, she went back to see Claire. Claire was standing at the foot of the main staircase, looking upward as if counting steps. Maya asked, "You said 8 people. What do you know?" Claire exhaled. A former conservator once heard 8 voices in the basement. Who? Daniel Price. He worked here more than 20 years ago. Where is he now? Claire looked at her. He died. Maya was quiet. How? An accident. He fell down the stairs at his own home. After working here? 3 days after he resigned. Maya felt cold at the back of her neck. Claire continued, Daniel left a box of notes. Nobody wanted to keep it. I could not throw it away. Do you still have it? Maya asked. Claire nodded. I kept it. Daniel Price's box was in the rear archive, the one place Maya had been told not to enter. Claire unlocked the door with a separate key. The room smelled of old paper, dry wood, and oxidized metal. Storage boxes lined the shelves, labeled in pencil. Claire pulled down a small gray box. Daniel began the way you did. He wanted to explain the footsteps scientifically. Inside were cassette tapes, staircase photographs, floor plan copies, a notebook, and one small object wrapped in cloth. Maya opened the cloth. A small brass bell lay inside. It had no wire and no handle. A thin crack split its side. It was never part of the official collection, Claire said. Daniel found it in a wall gap near the service stairs. Maya touched the bell. It was ice cold. The room was not. She opened Daniel's notebook. The early pages were ordinary: sound locations, reverberation notes, times of footsteps. But the later pages grew slanted and frantic. One sentence was underlined again and again. The footsteps are not walking. They are counting. Another page read, 8 sides. 8 paths. 8 missing names. The house does not want Madison. It wants the witness. Maya turned the page. A folded sheet fell out. It was a copy of an old floor plan, but Daniel had drawn 8 red paths over it. Each began in the basement, passed through a service route, touched a public room, and ended at the round room upstairs. In the center of the round room, he had written one line. The table heard it. Maya frowned. Which table? The one in the round room, Claire said. The treaty table. Is it original? The room has changed over time. Some pieces are original. Some are interpreted. But Daniel was convinced the room preserved sound. On the final page of the notebook, Daniel had written in a shaking hand. If you hear the 9th step, do not look up. Maya closed the notebook. You still want me to keep going? Claire did not answer immediately. I do not want you to, she said. But it has already started with you. What has started? Claire looked toward the archive door. The house chooses listeners. Once you hear the voice, you cannot pretend you did not. The third night was February 17th, the anniversary of the signing of the Treaty of Ghent at Octagon House. Maya knew she should refuse. A reasonable part of her said she had been pulled into another person's obsession. Claire may have told her too much. Daniel may have lost himself in old stories. The recordings could be electrical interference, radio signals, structural vibration, or equipment failure. But another part of her had heard a woman whisper, not him. And that part knew an answer was somewhere inside the house. Maya could not stand a sound without a source. At 10 p.m., she set the full system again. This time she added a contact microphone to the stair post, just above the Amity button. If the little button transmitted vibration, she wanted to know. Claire did not stay. Before leaving, she gave Maya another photocopy. Daniel hid this in the notebook cover, Claire said. It was a partial list of people who had served in the house over different periods. Some names were incomplete. Some were only roles or nicknames. One name had been circled. Winnie Jackson. Beside it, Daniel had written, "She answered the bell." Who was Winnie? Maya asked. A woman connected to the house and surviving records. An enslaved woman. But I do not have enough documentation to claim every detail. Daniel thought she was connected to the bell? Daniel thought she was the last person to hear something no one was supposed to hear. What? Claire shook her head. He never made that clear. Maya looked at the paper. Then tonight, I will ask. Claire gripped her hand. Maya. Do not ask unless you are ready to answer. That sentence meant nothing to Maya then. By the end of the night, it would mean everything. At 10:03, the footsteps began. Maya stood in the round hall. She did not hide in the staff room this time. She wanted to hear it with her own ears. The footsteps rose from the basement. 1, 2, 3. Then the bell rang. This time it was not faint. It filled the house. Ding. Ding. Maya looked toward the service stairs. In the darkness, a white shape moved. Not a person. Not a beam of light. Just a thin motion, like cold breath wearing the shape of a dress. Maya kept her voice steady. Winnie? Every sound stopped. Even the traffic outside disappeared. The whole house fell into absolute silence. Then a woman's voice came down from the second floor. Not my name. Maya was not prepared for an answer. Then what is your name? The main staircase creaked. One step. Thump. A second. Thump. No one stood on the stairs. Yet dust lifted from each tread as though invisible feet were touching down. The woman's voice said, "They took names upstairs. We kept them below." Maya swallowed. You want me to go to the basement? No answer. Only the bell. Ding. 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 Maya went down. The basement steps were narrow and low, forcing anyone who descended to bow their head. The air below felt thick. The recorder near the wall blinked. Beside it, in the dust, were 8 footprints. Bare feet. Smaller than an adult's. They did not lead to the stairs. They led into the wall. Maya knelt and shone her light across the brick. At the base of the wall, behind old plaster, was a narrow crack. She used the utility knife from her bag and carefully loosened the plaster. A piece fell away. Behind it was a hollow space. She reached inside and touched cloth. She pulled out a small rotted pouch. Inside were folded papers, dry enough to break, and one button. Not an ivory button like the Amity button upstairs. This one was bone, dull and yellowed. On its face was a tiny mark. The number 8. Maya unfolded the first paper. The writing had nearly faded, but some lines remained. It was not a letter from an owner. Not an official record. It was a list. 8 names. Maya could not read all of them. Some had faded. Some were only initials. But the first name was clear. Eliza. Beneath it was another line. I heard them in the round room. The moment Maya read the sentence, something slammed upstairs. A table being dragged. Then a man's voice spoke. Not distant. Not distorted. Clear, as if he were standing in the basement with her. Burn it. Another voice answered, the president must not be named. Maya could not move. The woman whispered beside her ear. Not Madison. Maya closed her eyes. From the beginning, she had thought the secret was about Madison. About the treaty. About the war. But the voice had told her again and again. Not him. Then who? She looked at the paper again. The next line had almost vanished, but in the angled light she saw the pressure marks of letters pressed into the sheet. She shaded the back gently with pencil. The hidden line appeared. They signed peace above while they sold us below. Maya felt her throat close. The haunting was not asking her to retell the glory of a treaty. It was not Dolly Madison. It was not the ghost of a president. The footsteps belonged to people who had heard a hidden transaction beneath official history. In the same house where peace was being discussed upstairs, human lives were still being counted, moved, separated, and erased. 8 names. 8 rounds. 8 sides of the house. 8 people never allowed into the main story. Maya's handheld recorder went dead. At the same moment, a footstep sounded on the basement stairs. She turned. No one was there. Cold air poured down. Thump. Maya remembered Daniel's warning. If you hear the 9th step, do not look up. Only then did she begin to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The footsteps stopped in front of her. A footprint appeared in the dust. Then another. As if someone were standing directly before her. Maya did not look up. A woman's voice asked, "Will you carry them?" Maya understood. Not carry their bodies. Carry their names. Carry their voices. Carry the story out of the house. She whispered, "I will." Silence. Then the 9th step sounded. Right in front of her. Maya's body moved before her mind could stop it. She looked up. Maya woke in the round hall. Morning light came through the windows. Claire was kneeling beside her, pale and shaking. "Maya. Can you hear me?" Maya opened her eyes. Her throat felt raw. In one hand, she still held the rotted pouch. Claire saw it and went silent. "You found it," she said. Maya sat up. Her head ached as if she had struck a wall. "I saw someone," she said. Claire did not ask who. Maya looked toward the stairs. Not a woman. Not Madison. A man on the staircase. Dressed in black. No face. Claire closed her eyes. Daniel saw him too. "Who is he?" "I don't know." "Yes, you do." Claire was silent for a long time. In some legends, people mention a man in black, she said. Some say he is John Taylor. Some say he is a guest. Daniel did not believe either. What did Daniel believe? Claire looked at Maya. The counter. Maya frowned. The counter of what? Claire answered almost without sound. People. The air between them went cold. Maya opened the pouch and took out the list of 8 names. Claire looked at it as if she were looking at an old wound. Is this enough to publish? Maya asked. Not as a complete academic conclusion, Claire said. But it is enough to reopen questions. Enough to search the archives again. Then publish it. Claire shook her head. It is not that simple. Board approval, donors, provenance, verification. Maya cut her off. These people have waited more than 200 years. Claire looked down. I know. No, Maya said. You knew the footsteps. You had not heard them. That made Claire lower her head. Maya stood. I will process the audio. I will make the episode. If the museum will not publish it, the documentary team will. Claire grabbed her hand. Maya, you do not understand. Everyone who carries this story out. Everyone what? Claire did not finish. From somewhere in the house, a bell rang. One sound only. Claire released Maya's hand as if burned. Maya looked toward the 2nd floor. Did you hear that? Claire nodded. What does it mean? Maya asked. Claire's voice was almost gone. Someone has been called. 3 days later, Maya was in her apartment, barely sleeping. She had backed up the files to 3 drives, 1 cloud folder, and an encrypted link sent to a journalist friend. She opened the recordings from the night of February 17th. At first, they seemed nearly empty. The main recorder was full of noise. The infrared camera had filmed darkness. The basement microphone had lost signal right when she found the pouch. But when Maya aligned the channels using the stairpost microphone as a reference, a hidden layer appeared. It did not exist inside one file. It appeared only when all 8 files were played together. Maya stared at the screen. 8 channels. 8 rounds. 8 voices. Each voice spoke one piece. Together, they formed a testimony. Not complete. Not clean enough for a history book. But enough to make the listener understand that beneath the official stories of peace, power, and architecture, there was another floor. A floor made from people forced into silence. Maya heard Eliza most clearly. Then Abram. Then Ruth. Then a name that sounded like Samuel, or Samson. Then other syllables broken by age and static. There was a child crying. A bell. A man's voice saying, "Count them again." Then a woman's voice answered. "We are not numbers." Maya sat motionless. She was no longer thinking about ghosts. She was thinking about how often history turns people into floorboards. Into background noise. Into footsteps no one investigates unless the room is already famous for someone else. She sent the first mix to Claire. The file name was simple. The Eighth Walk, raw mix. 10 minutes later, Claire called. Her voice was shaking. Maya, you have to delete it. No. You do not understand what that recording contains. I understand enough. No. You only heard 8 voices. Maya went still. Claire whispered, Daniel heard 8 voices too. But when he played the completed mix, there was a 9th. Maya felt the blood leave her face. Whose voice? Claire said, his. The line went quiet. Maya looked at the screen. The 8 audio channels were still open. She realized she had not listened to the end. At 18 minutes and 14 seconds into the mix, after the final bell, there was a long silence. Then one footstep. Maya did not touch the keyboard. A second step. She whispered, no. A third step. Thump. On the screen, a new audio track appeared. She had not created it. Track 9. Its automatic label read, Maya Room. She stood up so fast her chair hit the floor. Her headphones were lying on the desk. From them came the sound of her own breathing. Not her current breathing. The breathing from that night in Octagon House, right before she looked up at the man in black. Then her own voice came through the recording. Clear. Shaking. I will. Will you carry them? I will. The lights in her apartment flickered. Outside her apartment door, footsteps entered the hallway. Thump. 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 The apartment next door was empty. It had been under renovation for weeks. Maya picked up her phone and called Claire. No signal. The footsteps stopped outside her door. A bell rang. Not her doorbell. An old brass bell. Ding. Maya looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. Then a piece of paper slid slowly under the door. She did not want to pick it up. But her hand reached down anyway. Old paper. Dry. Smelling of dust and smoke. One line was written across it in Daniel Price's handwriting. The witness becomes the 9th. 1 week later, the audio documentary about Octagon House was released. It was 38 minutes long. Maya Tran's name did not appear in the credits. The narrator said the audio technician originally assigned to the project had withdrawn for personal reasons. The episode told the story of Octagon House. The burning of the White House. Madison. Dolly. The Treaty of Ghent. The strange 8-sided architecture. The staircase legends. And one unexplained layer of sound recorded inside the building. Online listeners argued about it for days. Some called it staged. Some called it electrical interference. Some said they could hear a woman crying. Some said that at 31 minutes and 8 seconds, a voice whispered their own name. The episode became famous in historical haunting communities. But no one knew that the public version was missing its final 3 minutes. 3 minutes Claire Whitman refused to release. 3 minutes in which 8 voices recited 8 names. And after that, a 9th voice recited its own. Maya Tran. 3 months later, Claire resigned. She left behind a short letter saying it was time for Octagon House to tell more than the stories hidden in plain sight. Soon after, an independent research group began reviewing additional records connected to the people who had lived and worked inside the house. They had not yet announced a major conclusion. History requires evidence. And evidence does not always know how to speak for itself. But the new night guards at Octagon House began noticing something different. The footsteps still began at 10:03. They still rose from the basement. They still crossed the round hall. They still climbed the main staircase. They still stopped at the round room upstairs. But there were no longer 8 rounds. Now there were 9. The first 8 steps sounded old. Slow. Heavy. As if coming from another century. The 9th was lighter. A little quicker. Like the shoe of a modern woman. Sometimes, after the 9th step, recorders inside the house turned on by themselves. They did not capture bells. They did not capture crying. They did not capture the man in black. They captured only one small whisper. In Vietnamese. Do not only listen to the part of history that is spoken the loudest. And there is one more thing. In the round hall of Octagon House, near the foot of the staircase, where the small amity button still rests beneath its protective cover, staff sometimes find the dust disturbed in a tiny circle. Like a button made of bone. Marked with the number 9. No one knows who puts it there. No camera records it. No employee admits to touching it. And whenever a visitor asks about it, the guide only smiles and says it is probably dust from the old ceiling. But if you stand long enough at the bottom of the staircase, if you say nothing, if you listen at the exact moment the house stops breathing, you will hear the footsteps going down into the basement. Not to hide. To call the next person. If this story stayed with you, remember this: not every haunting begins with a ghost. Sometimes it begins with a name history forgot to say out loud. Subscribe for more true place horror stories, hidden histories, and strange American legends where the past refuses to stay silent. And tonight, if you hear footsteps where no one is walking, do not count them.
That night, there was not a single visitor left on Angel Island. The last ferry had pulled away from Isla Cove at 6:20 in the evening. The sun had already dropped behind the horizon, leaving San Francisco Bay in a cold silver gray. Far in the distance, the Golden Gate Bridge was only a dim red scar in the fog, slowly disappearing one section at a time. Inside the old detention barracks of the Angel Island Immigration Station, Ling Tran stood alone in the former men's dormitory. Large monitoring headphones covered her ears. A digital recorder sat in her right hand. In front of her, rows of empty iron bunk beds stretched into the dark, lined up like the ribs of something that had been dead for a very long time. Ling was recording room tone, the natural sound of an empty room. A normal job. At least, that was what she kept telling herself. For the first 10 seconds, the recording captured nothing but wind slipping through the cracks in the old wooden door. After 20 seconds, there was the faint creak of floorboards contracting in the cold. At 37 seconds, there was crying. Very soft, very far away, like a woman trying to cry without letting anyone hear her. Ling pulled one side of the headphones away from her ear. The room was silent. She put the headphones back on. The crying was still there. This time it sounded closer. Then, from the far end of the barracks, behind the door that led into the Old North corridor, came 3 knocks. Ling stopped breathing. On the recorder screen, the waveform jumped up in 3 sharp peaks, as clear as if someone had been standing right beside the microphone. She turned toward the door. No one was there. But inside the headphones, a woman's voice whispered in broken, exhausted English. "Please, open." Ling stepped back. The wooden door in front of her sounded again. And this time, the crying no longer sounded like a grown woman. It sounded like a newborn baby. Angel Island is a real island in San Francisco Bay, California. Today, it is part of Angel Island State Park, known for its hiking trails, its views of San Francisco, Alcatraz, and the Golden Gate Bridge, and its quiet, windswept beauty. But between 1910 and 1940, Angel Island was also the site of one of the most important and most painful immigration stations in the United States. For many immigrants arriving from across the Pacific, especially from Asia, Angel Island was not simply a gateway into America. It was a place of detention, interrogation, medical inspection, fear, and waiting. The island was chosen partly because of its isolation. It was surrounded by water. Movement in and out could be controlled. People could be examined, questioned, separated, delayed, or sent away. Inside the detention barracks, many detainees carved poems and messages into the wooden walls. Some were written with knives, some with nails, some with whatever small piece of metal a person could hide. Those words are still preserved today. They are not just markings on a wall. They are evidence of hope, anger, grief, and the human need to be remembered. Ling Chuan did not believe in ghosts. She was 32 years old, a freelance audio technician in San Francisco. She recorded, cleaned, restored, and rebuilt sound for museums, historical podcasts, independent documentaries, and archival exhibits. She believed in frequency. She believed in waveforms. She believed in wind pressure, old timber, loose hinges, metal vibration, bird calls distorted through microphones, and human fear making ordinary sounds feel alive. She did not believe in spirits that knew how to knock on doors. The Angel Island project came to her in early October, 3 weeks after her mother's funeral. The email came from a woman named Carolyn Wu, a content coordinator working on a new sound installation for the historic immigration station. The museum wanted to create an immersive audio experience for visitors. The wind across the cove, footsteps inside the barracks, doors closing, floorboards creaking, and selected readings based on the poems carved into the walls. "We need the real sound of the building," Carolyn told her during their first call. "Not library effects, not fake ambience. We want visitors to feel as if they are standing inside the place." Ling accepted immediately, not only because of the money. After the funeral, in the bottom drawer of her mother's desk, Ling had found a small wooden box. Inside it were three things: a tarnished brass key, an old black and white photograph with one folded corner, and a note written by her mother in Vietnamese. If you ever go to Angel Island, do not stay after dark. Under that line, her mother had written one more sentence: if you hear knocking, do not answer. Ling had read those words over and over for nights. Her mother, Tran Maihan, had been practical to the point of being cold. She did not watch horror movies. She did not believe in fortune tellers. She did not light incense except on death anniversaries. When Ling was a child and said something was standing in the corner of her room, her mother would simply turn on the light and say, "There is nothing there. You heard wrong." And yet, before she died, that same woman had left behind a warning that sounded like the beginning of a ghost story. Angel Island. 3 knocks, do not answer. That was why Ling took the job. She wanted to know what her mother had been afraid of. On the first morning, Ling took the ferry from Tibero. The sky was so clear that she could see Alcatraz to the south, the city in the distance, and the Golden Gate Bridge stretched across the fog like a red wound that refused to close. From the water, Angel Island looked almost impossible to fear. Rolling grass, eucalyptus trees, winding trails, cyclists, hikers, tourists with cameras, families pointing toward the skyline. No one arriving for the first time could easily imagine that behind all that calm beauty was a place where thousands of people had once arrived hoping to begin a new life, only to find themselves kept behind locked doors, behind fences, behind questions designed to break them. The immigration station stood on the northeastern side of the island near China Cove. When the tram stopped at the entrance, Ling saw low wooden buildings with pale walls and old roofs. Wind came through the trees, carrying the smell of salt, eucalyptus, and damp wood. Carolyn Wu was waiting outside the barracks. She was in her 40s, small-framed, with short dark hair, round glasses, and the calm voice of someone used to guiding people through painful history without making it softer than it was. "You're Ling?" "Yes. Thank you for taking this on," Carolyn said. "I should warn you, this place can feel heavy." Ling gave a small smile. "I once recorded audio in an old morgue for a podcast. I think I'll be fine." Carolyn did not smile back. "Angel Island is not like a morgue," she said. "In a morgue, the dead know they are dead. Here, a lot of people were still trying to keep living." The sentence made Ling fall quiet. Carolyn led her into the detention barracks. Inside, the light was much weaker. Tall windows dropped narrow bands of daylight across the floor. The wooden walls were protected in places by clear panels of glass. Behind the glass were lines of Chinese characters carved deep into the boards. "These are the poems," Carolyn said. "Many detainees carved them into the walls. Some used small knives, some used nails, some used bits of metal they managed to hide after inspection." Ling stepped closer. She could not read the characters, but she could see the force behind every stroke. It did not look like writing, it looked like a wound. "Visitors usually stand here for a few minutes and move on," Carolyn said. "But when you work with sound, you may notice that the building remembers things in its own way." "I thought we were just recording room tone," Ling said. "We are," Carolyn answered, "but you may hear more than the room." Ling turned toward her. Carolyn hesitated. "There is one small thing I should probably mention." "What thing?" "No one records inside the barracks at night anymore." Ling almost laughed. "Because of safety rules?" "Partly." "And the other part?" Carolyn looked toward the far end of the room. "Because of the knocking." The man assigned to help Ling was Daniel Ortiz, one of the park's maintenance employees. Daniel was about 50, sun-darkened, with a silver mustache and a large ring of keys clipped to his belt. He knew every door, every weak floorboard, every old electrical box, every hidden maintenance panel in the immigration station. "If you need anything, call me," he said while walking Ling through the building. "But if you can, don't call after 9. "Why? Because I am not here after 9. No one works overnight." Daniel looked at her as if the question itself was naive. "Would you want to work here overnight?" Ling shrugged. "If the pay was good enough." Daniel laughed once, but the laugh died quickly. "They pay me enough to know the money is not worth that." That afternoon, Ling began recording the main spaces: the exterior steps, the hallway, the dining area, the dormitory, the recreated interrogation room, and the rear yard facing the bay. During the day, the sounds were ordinary: wind, footsteps, tour guides speaking, children asking why people had been locked up, camera straps tapping against jackets. All of it could be identified, labeled, cleaned, and used. At almost 4 in the afternoon, after the last tour group had left, Carolyn handed Ling a thin project folder. "Here is the after-hours list," she said. Ling flipped through the pages. Barracks door from inside, men's dormitory, north hallway, storage stairwell, empty room ambience after visitors leave. "You want me to stay after everyone leaves the island?" Ling asked. "Only until 7:30. Daniel will bring the tram back and take you to the ferry landing." Daniel, standing a few feet away, immediately turned around. "I did not agree to that part." "Daniel," Carolyn said. He sighed. "Fine, but 7:30, not later." Ling looked from one of them to the other. "Did something happen here?" Carolyn did not answer. Daniel spun the keyring once around his finger. "You know the story about Ranger Alexander Weiss?" Ling shook her head. "In the 1970s, when this place was nearly forgotten, a ranger found the poems carved into the walls. If that had not happened, the barracks might have been demolished." Carolyn spoke softly. "We think of that as the moment the building spoke up for itself." Daniel added, "But some people who worked here said that before the poems were discovered, they had already heard knocking from inside the walls." Ling looked at the boards. "Old wood shifts." "Maybe," Daniel said. Then he looked straight at her. "But old wood usually does not knock exactly 3 times." On the first night, Ling heard nothing unusual. From 6 o'clock to 7:20, she captured excellent material: wind moving through old windows, hinges speaking under pressure, her own footsteps crossing the wooden floor, and the hollow sound of the dormitory after the public had gone. At exactly 7:30, Daniel arrived. "You done?" "Done? You're lucky," he said. "Because the ghost didn't scare me?" "No," Daniel said. "Because you haven't started believing that you want to hear more." That sentence stayed with her because Daniel was right. On the second night, when Carolyn asked if Ling would be willing to record one more after-hours session, Ling agreed faster than she should have. It was not because of the project. It was because of the photograph from her mother's box. That morning, before taking the ferry, Ling had scanned the old photograph and enlarged it on her computer. It showed a group of people standing in front of a wooden building. The background was blurred, but she recognized the roofline and windows of the barracks on Angel Island. In one corner stood a young man in a white shirt, his face stern and still. On the back of the photo, her mother had written 3 words: "Grandfather Loy, 1931. Ling had never heard of anyone in the family named Loy. When she called her aunt and asked about him, her aunt was silent for a long time. Then she said, "That is not something you should dig up." "Who was he?" Ling asked. "The man who helped our family get to America." "How did he help?" Her aunt sighed. "Some doors open with keys. Some doors open with lies. Don't ask again." Then she hung up, and Ling wanted to ask even more. The second night on Angel Island was colder. Fog moved in soon after sunset. The lamps around the immigration station glowed in soft circles, as if each bulb had been wrapped in wet cloth. Carolyn had to leave early for a meeting in San Francisco. Daniel stayed until 6:30 to check the power, then handed Ling a temporary key. "You stay in the barracks and the main hallway only," he said. "No hospital building, no storage level, no sealed doors." "I know. And if you hear knocking, don't answer," Ling said. Daniel froze. "Who told you that?" "My mother." Something changed in Daniel's face. "She worked here?" "No, I don't think she ever came here." Daniel stared at her a little longer. "What was her name?" "Hein. Tran Mai Hein." The keys in Daniel's hand clinked once. He turned away. "I'll be back at 7:30. "You know my mother's name?" Ling asked. Daniel did not answer. He stepped outside and shut the door. Click! The lock sounded very clear, and in that moment, Ling realized she was standing inside a building that had not been designed to welcome people in. It had been designed to keep them there. She placed the microphone in the center of the dormitory, pressed record, and became still. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 17 minutes. Nothing but wind. Then, from the far end of the room, Ling stood frozen. She looked toward the north corridor door, the one Daniel had told her not to open. She looked at the recorder. 3 sharp peaks were visible on the screen. Not imagination. Knock, 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 knock. This time louder. Ling swallowed. "Who's there?" The moment she spoke, the whole room seemed to drop in temperature. The recorder gave off a small burst of static. The overhead light flickered inside the headphones. A woman's voice said, "Wrong answer." Ling pulled the headphones off. She stepped back. "Daniel?" No one replied. She tried calling him. No signal. On the island after dark, reception could be weak. Carolyn had warned her, but now it did not feel like a technical inconvenience. It felt like a trap. Then the crying began. Not from the door, behind her. Ling turned around. Between 2 rows of bunk beds near the far wall, a woman stood with her back to Ling. Long black hair, a pale gray dress, both arms hanging at her sides. Ling did not scream. Her throat locked shut. The woman lowered her head as if she were looking at something on the floor. Then she slowly began to turn. But before Ling could see her face, the lights went out. Darkness filled the barracks. The recorder kept running, and in the dark, a baby began to cry. Daniel arrived 12 minutes late. When he opened the barracks door, Ling was sitting on the front steps, pale, shaking, clutching her equipment bag against her chest. "You answered it," Daniel said. It was not a question. Ling stared at him. "You know about this." Daniel looked away. "What did you hear?" "A woman, a child, 3 knocks." Daniel closed his eyes. "You should not come back." "What happened here?" "A lot of things. Something connected to my mother." This time, Daniel was silent too long. Ling stood. "Why did you know her name?" Daniel walked down 1 step and looked out toward the dark bay. "Years ago, your mother came here." "Impossible. She never told me." "She came in 1997, Daniel said, "with an older woman, maybe your grandmother." "For what?" "To ask for an old file, one that was not in the public index." "Whose file?" Daniel turned back to her. "A man named Tran Quang Loi." The name landed between them like a heavy object. Ling opened her bag and took out the old photograph. Is this him? Daniel looked at it, then nodded. I saw that face once in an old staff record. Staff? Ling said. He was not a detainee, not detained. Daniel shook his head. He worked here as an auxiliary interpreter. The wind of the bay turned cold. Everything Ling thought she understood about the photograph changed at once. In her family, Grandfather Loy had always been described as the man who helped them reach America, but no one had ever said how. No one had ever said which side of the door he had stood on. That night, Ling did not sleep. Back in her small apartment in the Richmond district, she connected the recorder to her laptop and opened the file. There was wind, her footsteps, her own voice asking, "Who's there?" Then 3 knocks. After that, static. Ling raised the volume. The woman's voice came through. Wrong answer. Immediately after it, buried low under the noise, was another pattern of small knocks, not 3, many. 1 knock, 2 knocks, 3 knocks. Then a pause, then 4. Ling opened the waveform analysis tool and cleaned the track. She reduced the low rumble, filtered out the wind, isolated the tapping. When the room noise fell away, she heard something underneath, a woman's voice, far away, saying, "Ask him again." Ling's skin tightened. The voice repeated, "Ask him again." Then came the voice of a young man speaking English with an accent. "She has no father here." A woman screamed, "No, he is waiting, he is waiting." Then the baby cried again. The file ended with 3 knocks very close to the microphone. Knock, knock, knock. But this time, after the knocking, there was another whisper. Not English, Vietnamese, very soft, like her mother's voice. "Ling, don't open it." The next morning, Ling went to the archival office connected to the Angel Island Immigration Station Foundation. Caroline was not there. A young staff member allowed Ling to search digitized materials related to interpreters from the 1930s after Ling explained that she was doing family research. The name appeared in a blurred scanned file. Tran Loi Q, auxiliary interpreter, Cantonese, Vietnamese, English, contract basis, 1929 to 1933. There was an employee photograph. It was the same man from her mother's picture. Ling looked at his face for a long time. She tried to find something familiar. The eyebrows, the nose, the chin. Then she realized what made her blood go cold. She looked like him. Not much, but enough. In another folder, she found an immigration case file from 1931. The woman being questioned was named Li Mei Lan. Female, age 21, from Guangdong. She stated that her father was Li Chung, a lawful resident in San Francisco. She had arrived with a 3-month-old baby. The child was named Li Sweat. The interrogation record was brutal in its precision. How many steps led to her father's front door in San Francisco? Which way did the entrance face? How many windows were in the kitchen? What did the left side neighbor sell? Who had delivered her baby? Li Mei Lan answered most of it, but on the final page there was a handwritten note. Interpreter reports inconsistency. Subject claims father waiting in San Francisco. No matching sponsor confirmed. Child identity uncertain. Recommend continued detention. The signature below read LQ Tran. Ling read the line again and again. The file contained one more note. 3 weeks later, infant transferred due to illness. Mother became hysterical after separation. The next page was missing. No release date, no deportation date, no final decision. Only a pencil note in the corner. Door 12. 3 knocks. No response. Carolyn found Ling in the reading room close to noon. You saw it, Carolyn said. Ling looked up. You knew? I knew there was a missing file. I did not know it connected to your family. My mother came here. Yes? Why was she afraid? Carolyn took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. In 1997, your mother and your grandmother came here looking for records on Tran Quang Loi. They said there was a family story that did not match the paperwork. What story? Your grandmother had been told that her birth mother died when she was very young, but her American birth record appeared later than it should have. Her mother's name was blank. Her father's name was Tran Quang Loi. Ling felt the room tilt. Are you saying? I am not certain, Carolyn said. Don't talk to me like a museum label. Carolyn looked at her carefully. I think your grandmother may have been the baby in the file. Lee sweat. Ling could not speak. The baby in the recording. The crying. The child taken from her mother. If Carolyn was right, the crying Ling heard was not the sound of some stranger's ghost. It was the first sound in her own family's American history. What happened to Li Mei Lan? Ling asked. Carolyn was silent. You know, Ling said, I can see it in your face. Carolyn stood, walked to a locked cabinet behind her desk, and removed a gray preservation envelope. This was never digitized, she said. Inside was a copy of an old handwritten letter. The paper was yellowed. The English was uneven. This letter was found in a gap behind bunk 12 during restoration, Carolyn said. No one knows exactly who wrote it. It was signed only M.L. Ling read the copy. If my child is alive, please tell her I knocked. I knocked 3 times as they told me. I waited for the interpreter to return. He said if I stayed quiet, he would help me. But when they asked again, he changed my words. Ling's hands began to tremble. I do not know why he took my child. I only know that night my baby cried behind the door. I knocked until my hands bled. No one opened. At the bottom was one final line. If someone of my child's blood ever hears the knocking, do not answer with words. Open the door. Ling looked up. My mother wrote, don't open it. Carolyn looked heartbroken. Maybe your mother was afraid of the opposite. What opposite? That if you opened it, you would know the truth. Ling should have stopped there. She had enough truth to leave the project, bring the records to her family, cry for a few days, and keep living. But some stories do not release the listener just because the listener is afraid. That evening, she went back to Angel Island. She did not tell Carolyn. She did not tell Daniel. She boarded the last ferry as an ordinary visitor carrying 3 things, her recorder, the brass key from her mother's box, and the copied letter from Li Mei Lan. When the ferry reached the island, the sky had already begun to turn gray. Instead of waiting for the tram, Ling walked the road around the island's shoulder. The wind was strong. The trees rubbed against each other with the dry whisper of old clothing. By the time she reached the immigration station, the outer barracks door was locked, but the brass key in her hand fit the side lock perfectly. Click! The door opened. Ling stood still. Her mother's key was not a keepsake. It was a real key. Someone in her family had kept a key to this detention station. Inside, the barracks felt darker than before. She did not turn on the main lights. She used a small flashlight and walked straight to bunk 12. It stood against the north wall. Above it, behind protective glass, were carved lines from another century. Near the floor, one wooden panel was a slightly different color, as if it had been removed and replaced. Ling knelt and aimed the flashlight at the edge. There was a narrow gap. She slid the brass key into it. It was not a lock, but the head of the key was just wide enough to pry at the board. The panel loosened. Behind it was a dark hollow. Inside lay a small rusted tin box. Ling reached in. The moment her fingers touched it, 3 knocks sounded behind her. Ling did not turn around. She remembered the letter. Do not answer with words. Open the door. The knocking came again, this time from the north door. The door Daniel had warned her not to open. Ling stood, holding the tin box, and walked toward it. Each step on the floor sounded as if another step was walking with her. When she reached the door, she saw faint scratches in the wood. They were so pale that she would have missed them without the flashlight. 3 horizontal marks, 1 vertical mark, then 3 more horizontal marks, as if someone had counted days with fingernails. The old lock turned with the brass key. The door opened. No one stood behind it. Only a narrow hallway leading into the unused north rooms. A damp, stale smell rolled out, and the crying of the baby became clearer than ever. Ling stepped inside. The north hallway was not part of the public tour. The ceiling was low. The walls were peeling. Dust covered the floorboards. Small doors lined both sides, each with a narrow viewing slot at eye level. Ling walked to the last room. A faded number 12 had been painted on the door. The crying came from inside. She placed her hand on the knob. At that exact moment, her phone suddenly had service. It rang. The name on the screen was Mom. Ling nearly dropped the phone. Her mother had been dead for 3 weeks. The call kept ringing. On an empty island, in the hallway of a locked detention station, Ling answered. There was no voice, only breathing. Then her mother's voice came through, warped and thin like an old tape playing underwater. Ling, don't open that door. Tears filled Ling's eyes. Mom, do not let her know you. Who? The one whose child was taken. Ling's voice broke. Who was she? The line went quiet for several seconds. Then her mother said, she was the woman our family buried alive in paperwork. The call ended. At once the crying inside room 12 stopped. A woman's voice whispered from behind the door. Are you Sweat? Ling stood motionless. She was not Sweat. Sweat had been her grandmother. Sweat had been dead for years, but blood was still here. Ling did not answer. She opened the door. The room was empty. No child, no woman, only a wooden chair, an old sink, and on the far wall, a section of boards scratched almost raw. Ling stepped closer. In the flashlight beam, the scratches formed words. Not Chinese characters, not complete English. Broken lines, desperate lines. Words made by someone with too little time, too little light, and too much blood in her hands. He said wait. He took baby. He locked door. Below that was one final line, written in old Vietnamese. Loi, give me back my child. Ling sank to her knees. His name was there. No more doubt. No more missing page. No more family story. Tran Quang Loi had not merely mistranslated. He had taken the child and locked the door. The tin box was difficult to open. Inside were 3 things. A piece of infant cloth nearly rotted away, an old birth certificate, and a small notebook belonging to Tran Quang Loi. Ling opened the notebook. The first pages listed expenses, names, room numbers, dates. The later pages changed. The handwriting became uneven. The woman will not stop asking. The child is better with us. No one will believe her. If she returns to China, the child dies. If the child stays, the child lives. Ling turned to the last written page. The date was November 14th, 1931. She found the door. She knows. I told the guard she was hysterical. They locked her in the north room until morning. She knocked for hours. I did not go back. The final line read, in the morning, she was quiet. Ling closed the notebook. The air in the room thickened. Behind her, footsteps crossed the doorway. Slow, dragging, Ling turned. The woman stood in the doorway. This time, Ling could see her face. It was not rotten. It was not monstrous. It was not like anything from a horror movie. It was the face of a young mother who had cried until there was nothing left inside her to spend. Her eyes were not angry, only wounded and hopeful. In her arms she held an empty bundle of cloth. She looked at Ling, then at the tin box. Sweat? Ling began to cry. No, I am Sweat's granddaughter. The woman did not understand every word, but perhaps blood understood what language could not. She reached toward Ling. Ling could not touch the hand, only cold. Then, behind the woman, the dark hallway rang with the sound of a lock turning. A man's voice said, "She has no father here." Ling recognized the voice. The voice from the recording. The voice of Tran Quang Loi. The woman shrank back. The room trembled. The door behind Ling slammed shut. Darkness rushed in. Ling did not know how long she was locked inside room 12. Her phone had no signal. The flashlight was fading. The recorder kept running on the wooden chair, capturing everything. Outside the door, a man paced back and forth. Not fast, not slow, like a guard. Ling pounded on the door. "Daniel!" No answer. She struck it harder. "Is anyone there?" From the other side, the man's voice said, "Wrong answer." Ling stepped back. Then she understood. The answer was not wrong because she had asked who was there. It was wrong because for almost a century, everyone who entered that building had been asking the wrong question. They asked, "Who is the ghost?" They asked, "Where is the knocking coming from?" They asked, "Did someone die here?" But no one had asked the question Li Meilan wanted asked again. Ask him again. Ling stood in the dark room, opened Tran Quang Loi's notebook, switched on the recorder, and spoke loudly. "Tran Quang Loi." The footsteps outside stopped. Ling continued, her voice shaking but clear. "Did Li Meilan have a father waiting for her in San Francisco?" Silence. Then the man's voice answered from the hallway. "She has no father here." Ling shouted, "You lied." The room turned freezing cold. From inside the walls, knocking began. Not 3 knocks, dozens, hundreds, as if every person ever detained in that barracks had begun striking the wood from the inside. Ling read from the file. Lee Chung, Stockton Street, sponsor confirmation pending. He existed. He sent a letter. You hid it. On the other side of the door, the man's voice distorted. "I saved the child." The child's name was Lee Sweat, Ling said. "Not Tran, not yours." The knocking grew louder. The door began to shake. "I gave her a life," the man growled. Ling was crying, but she did not stop. "You took her mother away." A scream filled the corridor. Not the woman's scream, a man's. The door flew open. Cold wind rushed into the room. In the hallway, Li Meilan stood facing a dark male figure in a white shirt. His face was covered by shadow, but Ling knew who he was. Trang Quang Loi. He did not look at Li Meilan. He looked at Ling, as if recognizing his own blood, as if waiting for her to defend him. Ling held the tin box against her chest. "No," she whispered. The shadow stopped. Ling said louder, "You did not save anyone." Li Meilan took one step forward. The shadow stepped back. From every wall, the knocking settled into a single rhythm. Knock, 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 knock. Li Meilan raised her hand. She did not touch him. She only pointed to the door of room 12. Like a command, for the first time in nearly a century, the man who had stood outside the locked door was forced to walk inside it. The door slammed shut. The lock turned by itself. Immediately, the man began pounding from the inside. "Open!" Ling stood in the hallway, shaking. Li Meilan turned to her. In the woman's arms, the empty bundle was no longer empty. A baby was sleeping there, no longer crying. Li Mei Lan bowed her head to Ling, then she faded into the dark. The knocking in the wall stopped. For the first time, the barracks were completely silent. Daniel found Ling close to midnight. He said the barracks door was still locked from the outside. He did not understand how she had gotten in. He did not understand why the north wing lights had come on after years of being unused. Ling did not tell him everything. She gave Carolyn the notebook, the birth certificate, the letter, and the audio file. 3 weeks later, Angel Island closed part of the tour route for additional preservation work. In a hollow space behind Room 12, conservators found more old documents, including part of a sponsor letter from Li Chung and several notes matching the 1931 file. Li Mei Lan's name was added to the internal research record. Li Suet's name was restored as the possible original identity of a child whose life had been changed through silence. Carolyn asked Ling whether she wanted the family connection made public. Ling said yes, not because she wanted to turn grief into an exhibit, because silence had been the door that held Li Mei Lan longest. On the day the new sound installation opened, Ling stood among the first group of visitors. Inside the barracks, the narration played softly. It was not a ghost story. It used no cheap effects, only real wind, real floorboards, the sound of pencil on paper, and, at the end of the room, 3 very soft knocks. Knock, 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 knock. A little girl standing beside her mother asked, "Mommy, who is knocking?" The mother read the display panel and answered, "Maybe someone who wanted to be remembered." Ling looked at the wooden wall. For 1 second, she saw a young woman standing beside bunk 12. She was not crying. She was not holding an empty bundle. Beside her stood a little girl about 3 years old, hair tied neatly back, one hand clutching her mother's dress. Li Mei Lan looked at Ling. She smiled. Then she disappeared into the afternoon light. Ling thought it ended there. She was wrong. That night, Ling returned to her apartment in San Francisco very late. She placed the rusted tin box on a small altar she had made for her mother. Beside her mother's photograph, she placed a copy of Li Suet's birth record and a handwritten note. "You had a name. Your mother had one too." The apartment was quiet. Outside the window, fog from the bay moved over the rooftops. Ling showered, changed clothes, then sat down to listen to the final recording from Angel Island. In the audio, after the door to room 12 slammed shut, there was a long silence. Then Li Mei Lan's voice whispered, very softly, "Thank you," Ling cried. She was about to close the file when it kept playing. At the very end, after nearly a full minute of white noise, there was another sound she had not noticed before. A man knocking on a door, very far away, very deep, as if from inside a room with no way out. Then Trang Guangloi's voice came through, so small it was almost lost in the static. "Ling, open the door for me." Her spine went cold. At that exact moment, someone knocked on her apartment door. Ling slowly turned her head. Outside the apartment, there were no footsteps, no shadow beneath the door. Only 3 more knocks. Knock, 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 knock. Ling looked at the altar. Her mother's photograph was still, but the brass key was gone, and on the wooden tabletop, a new sentence had appeared. It was not written with ink. It looked as if it had been scratched from underneath with fingernails. "Do not answer." Ling sat frozen in the dark. From outside the door, Grandfather Loy whispered, "Wrong answer." Then he began knocking harder. Not 3 times anymore. Again and again. Faster, louder, desperate, like a man who had finally realized that the last locked door on Angel Island was no longer on the island at all. It had followed the bloodline home. If this story stayed with you, remember this: some places are not haunted because the dead refuse to leave. Some places are haunted because the living refuse to listen. Onjul Island is real, its history is real. The names in this story may be fictional, but the silence behind them belongs to countless people who waited, questioned, carved, prayed, and hoped that someone would remember they had been there. So if you ever visit Onjul Island and you stand inside the old detention barracks after the tour has gone quiet, listen carefully. If the walls knock 3 times, do not ask who is there. Ask what was taken, and ask who never gave it back.
The first night Lin Tran heard the footsteps, she thought they were just old pipes. The second night, she thought someone had been left behind in the building. By the third night, when the security camera recorded 3 small shadows crossing the second-floor hallway at 2:17 a.m., Lin no longer knew what to call it. She replayed the footage one more time. The laptop screen reflected her pale face. Behind her, the archive room of Cameron House was so quiet she could hear the fluorescent light humming above her head. In the footage, the second-floor hallway was empty. Then a small, low shadow appeared at the edge of the frame. It had no face, no color. It was only a thin strip of darkness, as if someone had cut the shape of a child out of the night itself. The shadow moved slowly. A second one followed. Then a third. All 3 stopped in front of the old sewing room door. For a long time, they did not move. Then the shadow in the middle turned its head. It looked straight into the camera. And the screen went black. It was not a camera failure. It was not the laptop battery. Every light in the archive room went out at once. Lin sat frozen in her chair. In the dark, she heard a very small sound coming from the wall behind her. 3 slow knocks. Clear. Deliberate. As if someone were standing on the other side of the wall. Lin held her breath. Then, from inside the old brick wall, a child's voice whispered in broken English.
Don't open the blue door.
Cameron House currently operates at 920 Sacramento Street in San Francisco, California, serving the Chinese American community and families in Chinatown. Its history dates back to 1874. According to Cameron House's own historical account, the site was once the Occidental Mission Home, a refuge for Chinese girls. Donaldina Cameron arrived there in 1895 and is remembered for helping rescue thousands of women and girls over several decades. After the 1906 San Francisco earthquake and fire, the original building was destroyed. The structure at this location was rebuilt in 1908 using salvaged brick, with architect Julia Morgan. Lin Tran did not believe in ghosts. She was 28 years old, raised in San Jose, and trained in digital archiving. She worked freelance for small museums, church libraries, and community organizations that needed old records scanned before they fell apart. She believed in scanners. She believed in metadata. She believed in the smell of damp paper, faded ink, mouse-bitten files, and rusty metal clips that could tear a whole century apart if someone pulled too hard. But she did not believe in ghosts. At least not before she accepted a 3-week contract at Donaldina Cameron House. The job sounded ordinary. Part of the basement and storage area was scheduled for renovation. Before the contractors began removing the old shelving, Cameron House needed someone to inventory, scan, and sort several boxes of documents that had never been fully processed. The person who recommended Lin was Mrs. May Lau, a volunteer in her 70s, small in stature, silver-haired, and sharp-eyed. "You only need to work in the evenings," Mrs. Lau told her over the phone. "During the day we have classes, family services, and community programs. At night, it is quieter. No one will bother you." "Will there be a security guard on site?" Lynn asked. "Yes. Henry will be downstairs. But don't worry. This house is safe." Mrs. Lau paused. Then she added, "At least for people who do not come here with bad intentions." At the time, Lynn thought the old woman was simply speaking the way old people sometimes did. She did not know that sentence was the first warning. Cameron House stood on Sacramento Street, near the steep slopes that gave San Francisco its unmistakable shape. During the day, the Chinatown streets around it were alive with cable cars, tourists, vendors, roasted duck, steamed buns, and incense drifting from tiny storefronts pressed between old facades. But at night, after the metal gates rolled down and the streetlights threw yellow light across the brick walls, the street became something else. Quieter. Deeper. As if every brick were holding back a story that had not yet been given permission to speak. On her first evening, Lynn arrived at 8:40 p.m. Henry, the security guard, opened the door for her. He was in his 50s, thin, with salt and pepper hair. He spoke very little and carried black coffee in a paper cup everywhere he went. "You're the archive scanner?" he asked. "Yes. I'm Lynn." Henry looked at her for 1 second longer than he needed to. "Do you have family in Chinatown?" "No. My mother was Chinese Vietnamese, but I grew up in San Jose. My family never talked much about that side." Henry nodded. He did not ask another question. He led her through the ground floor hallway and pointed out the temporary archive room, the restroom, the stairs, and the emergency exit. "After 11, you shouldn't go up to the second floor unless you have to," he said. "Why?" "The lights up there flicker." "That's all?" Henry looked toward the stairwell. The second floor hallway above them was completely dark. "That's all." Lynn's workroom was at the end of a narrow hallway behind the offices. It held 3 metal shelves, 2 scanners, 1 long table, and 17 brown storage boxes with labels taped to their sides. Some labels were new. Some were so old the writing had almost melted into the cardboard. Box 03, Donor Letters. Box 07, Youth Programs. Box 12, Mission Home, 1900s. Box 19, Unsorted. Box 41, Do Not Discard. Lynn took off her coat, opened her laptop, and put on thin cotton gloves. The work began slowly. Invoices. Thank you letters. Community photographs. Meeting minutes. Class rosters. Near 11:30 p.m., she opened box 19. The moment the lid came off, a faint burnt smell rose into the room. It was not the smell of damp paper. It was not mildew. It was ash. Inside the box was a bundle of files tied with black cloth, several photographs burned at the edges, a small cloth-covered notebook warped by heat, and a tin box no larger than her palm. A piece of paper had been taped to the lid of the tin box. The blue ink had faded, but the handwriting was still readable. Do not open unless family is present. Lynn frowned. Whose family? She photographed the lid, made a note in the inventory sheet, and set the box aside. At 12:10 a.m., she heard the first sound. A tiny sound above the ceiling. Lynn looked up. There it was again. Like a small foot stepping on old floorboards. She took off her headphones. "Henry?" No one answered. Footsteps moved across the ceiling above her head. From left to right. Then they stopped. Lynn stood and opened the archive room door. The hallway was empty. The lights were still on. She walked to the staircase and looked up. Darkness gathered around the upper landing. "Henry," she called. From the lobby below, Henry answered, "I'm here." "Is anyone on the second floor?" A pause. Then Henry stepped out of the security office and looked up. "No. I just heard footsteps." "Old building." He answered too quickly. Too quickly for comfort. Lynn wanted to ask more, but Henry had already turned away. That night, she told herself it really was an old building. Old buildings always made noise. Wood expanded. Pipes rattled. Wind found cracks under doors. Everything could be explained. As long as you had not seen anything yet. On the second night, Lynn began scanning the cloth-covered notebook with the burned edges. Most of the pages were damaged. Some lines could still be read. Names. Ages. Dates of arrival. Health condition. Who brought them in? Where they had been found. Some notes were in English. Some were in Chinese characters. Some pages held only symbols. One page made Lynn stop for a long time. Unal, approximately 8 years old, found near the rear stairs, does not speak, always knocks 3 times when frightened. Below it was another line, in paler ink, "Do not allow the man with the green ring to see her again." Lynn photographed the page. She did not understand why a chill went down her spine. Maybe it was the detail about the 3 knocks. Maybe it was the tin box beside her, with a small green stain on the lid like oxidized copper. She was zooming in on the scan when the lights flickered. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then the scanner started by itself. Its lid was still open. There was no paper on the glass. But the bright scanning bar slid from one end to the other with a steady mechanical hum. Lynn stumbled back. On her computer screen, the scanning software created a new file. The file name appeared. blue_door_217.tiff. Lynn stood motionless. She had not named the file. She had not touched the keyboard. The scanner stopped. The image opened. It was not a page. It was a blurred black and white image, like a photograph taken a very long time ago. In the image was the second-floor hallway of Cameron House. At the end of the hallway was a door. The door was painted dark blue. In front of it stood a little girl with her back turned. Braided hair. A long-sleeved shirt too large for her body. bare feet. Lynn felt her heart pounding so hard it hurt. She opened the archive room door and ran into the hall. "Henry." No answer. She hurried toward the security office. Henry was not there. His coffee sat on the desk. The security monitor showed 4 camera feeds. Front lobby. Stairwell. Second floor hallway. Rear exit. Lynn looked at the second floor feed. On the screen, there was a blue door. She was certain Henry had not shown her that door. And in front of it, a little girl stood with her back to the camera. Lynn stepped back. The image on the monitor distorted. The little girl slowly turned her head. At the exact moment Lynn was about to see her face, the entire monitor went black. Behind her, from the hallway that led down to the basement, 3 knocks sounded. The next morning, Lynn called Mrs. Maylau. She did not tell her everything. She only said there were strange documents in box 19 and asked about the blue door. On the other end of the line, Mrs. Lau stayed quiet for a long time. "Where did you see it?" she asked. "On the second floor. Through the camera." "You did not open it, did you?" "No." "Good. Mrs. Lau, do you know that door?" There are things in old houses that should not be awakened until we understand why they were asleep. I can't do this job if everyone keeps hiding things from me. Mrs. Lau sighed. "Come by my apartment tonight before you start work. I will show you something." Mrs. Lau lived in a small apartment not far from Stockton Street. On the kitchen table, she had set out hot tea and an old envelope. Inside the envelope was a copy of a black and white photograph. Cameron House, decades earlier. In front of the entrance stood a group of women and girls. Some looked at the camera. Some looked down. A white woman stood in the middle, straight-backed and severe, her face steady and unsmiling. "Donaldina Cameron," Mrs. Lau said. The girl she helped used to call her Lo-Mo. The old mother. But not every child who entered that house escaped the past. Mrs. Lau turned the photograph over. On the back, someone had written in pencil. 17 were brought out that night. 1 went back. Lynn stared at the words. Went back where? Into Chinatown. Into the hands of the person who sold her. Or Mrs. Lau stopped. Or into the house itself. No one was ever sure. What was the girl's name? The record only says ML. Lynn froze. ML. The same initials from the notebook. You know ML is connected to the blue door? Mrs. Lau poured tea. Her hand trembled slightly. When I was a child, I attended summer classes at Cameron House. There was a legend among the children. If you stayed too late, you would hear footsteps running on the second floor. If you followed them, you would find a blue door that was not always there. Anyone who opened it would wake up the next morning with a high fever. Some said they dreamed of a little girl asking, "Where is my mother?" Just a children's story? Maybe. You don't think so? Mrs. Lau looked at her. Because when I was 12, I opened it. The apartment went still. Outside the window, a bus passed, sounding as distant as another city. What was inside? Lynn asked. Mrs. Lau pulled up her sleeve. On her wrist were 3 small scars. Straight in a row. As if a child's fingernails had dug into her skin. There was no room inside, she whispered. Only stairs going down. But Cameron House has no stairs like that on any floor plan. On the 3rd night, Lynn returned with a small audio recorder in her pocket. Henry opened the door. He looked at the dark circles under her eyes. You should rest. I still have a deadline. It isn't worth it. Do you know about the blue door? Henry's face hardened. What did Mrs. Lau tell you? So you do know. Henry locked the front door and turned the bolt with care. Listen to me. Finish the donor letters and the meeting records. Then go home. Don't touch box 41. Don't go upstairs. Don't listen to the knocking. Why? Because there is something in this house that doesn't like people digging. A ghost? Henry looked directly at her. The living are more frightening. That sentence followed Lynn for the next 3 hours. She tried to focus on the documents. But box 41 sat in the corner like an animal pretending to be dead. Do not discard. A red label. Shaky handwriting. At 12:43 a.m., Lynn finally dragged the box onto the table. Inside was only a gray cloth bag, a roll of old plans, and a packet wrapped in wax paper. She opened the plans first. They were modern basement diagrams. Nothing strange. Then she unfolded the wax paper. Inside was a hand-drawn map. The old building. Rooms numbered in ink. Sewing room. Sleeping room. Kitchen. Basement. And a blank space behind the north wall, circled in blue ink. Beside it someone had written. Not a room. A hiding passage. Lynn felt her heart drop. 3 knocks came from behind the metal shelves. She spun around. The last shelf trembled slightly. Not hard. Just enough to shake dust loose. Knock. 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 This time, the sound was closer. Lynn turned on the audio recorder. Is someone there? Silence. Then a tiny laugh. Not a happy laugh. The kind of laugh a child makes when she is trying not to cry. Lynn backed into the table. The scanner lit up by itself. Her laptop opened a new folder. Inside it was an audio file. 217.wave. Lynn did not remember recording it. She pressed play. At first there was only static. Then footsteps. Many footsteps. Small. Bare. Running fast over wooden floorboards. Then a woman's voice whispered. Count again.
Do not leave anyone missing.
Another voice answered.
16. No, it must be 17.
The static rose. Then a little girl cried. Lynn stopped the file. She sat without moving. From the hallway, Henry's voice cut through the silence. You opened box 41, didn't you? Lynn turned. Henry stood in the doorway. His face had gone pale. I was only inventorying it. You don't understand. Then explain it. Henry stepped into the room and looked at the hand-drawn map on the table. He reached for it. Lynn held it down. You want to hide it? I want you to live in peace. What's in there? Henry closed his eyes. Not every record should be made public. Some families changed their names. Some people spent their whole lives trying to forget that they were bought, locked away, and dragged out from under beds. You open all of it again, and who do you think you're saving? But there was a missing girl named Mel. Henry's mouth twitched. Who told you that? The records. The records burned. Not all of them. In that moment, Lynn understood. Henry was not afraid of ghosts. He was afraid of records. You know who ML was, she said. Henry stared at her for a long time. Then he said, if you hear a child's voice call your name tonight, do not answer. Why? Because in this house, names are not just used to call people. Sometimes they are used to keep people from leaving. He turned away. Go home before 1 o'clock. But Lynn did not go home. And that was the mistake that almost kept her from ever leaving Cameron House. At 1:37 a.m., the whole building seemed sealed under glass. Lynn sat in front of her laptop, but her eyes kept drifting to the door. She had texted Mrs. Lau. No response. She had also texted a friend who worked at a museum and sent a photograph of the hand-drawn map. The message showed only one check mark. It had not been delivered. The building had no signal. At 1:49, the hallway lights went out. At 1:53, the scanner began to run. No paper. No command. At 1:58, the sound of a sewing machine came from the second floor. Steady, fast, like a needle punching through fabric. Lynn stood. She knew she should not go. She also knew that if she did not go upstairs that night, she would never know the truth. The wooden stairs creaked under her feet. The second floor was colder than the ground floor. Not cold from wind. It was the cold of a room left empty for too long, where the air had learned how to stand still. The hallway stretched in front of her. Closed doors. A red exit sign glowing faintly at the far end. The sewing machine sound came from the third room on the left. The old sewing room. Lynn pushed the door open. The room was empty. There was no sewing machine. Only a few wooden tables pushed against the wall. But across the dusty surface of one table, a single red thread had been stretched from the window to the corner of the room. Lynn walked closer. The thread disappeared into a narrow crack between two wooden wall panels. She touched it. Immediately, behind her, a voice whispered,
Don't pull it.
Lynn turned. A little girl stood in the doorway. Braided hair. A long-sleeved shirt too large for her body. Bare feet. Her face was almost entirely covered by shadow. Only her eyes were visible. Dark. Deep. Wet. Lynn could not breathe. Are you ML? The girl shook her head. Then who are you? The girl pointed at Lynn's chest. I am inside your name. The sewing room door slammed shut. Lynn rushed to the handle and pulled. It would not open. Behind the wall, the knocking began. Not 3 knocks anymore. Many. Like dozens of small hands tapping from inside the wall. The red thread slipped from the crack. One of the wooden panels popped loose and fell to the floor. Behind it was a narrow black opening, wide enough for one person to squeeze through. From the darkness came the smell of ash. Then damp cloth. Then the old, sweet, choking smell of opium. Lynn switched on her phone flashlight. The beam revealed a passage behind the wall. It was not on the modern plans. It was not on the fire map. A hidden passage. On the other side of the sewing room door, Henry pounded hard. Lynn! Open the door! I can't! Don't go in there! But from inside the passage, the little girl's voice whispered. Someone is still down there. Lynn stood between two sounds. Outside was Henry. Inside was the child. She chose the child. The passage behind the wall was so narrow Lynn had to turn sideways. Bricks scraped her shoulder. Dust fell into her hair. Her phone had 12% battery left. The deeper she went, the smaller Henry's voice became. The passage sloped downward. They were not proper stairs, only broken brick steps, as if someone had built them quickly and sealed them away long ago. The walls were covered in scratches. Some were low, near Lynn's knees. Some were higher. She saw symbols carved with something sharp. 3 lines. A circle. The letter M. Then a crooked line in English. Count us again. A few steps later, the passage opened into a hidden space beneath the basement. It was not large. Only a pocket between the brick wall and the foundation. On the floor was a rusted iron bed. A pair of children's cloth shoes. A broken piece of porcelain bowl. And a wooden chest. The chest was locked with a brass padlock. The lock had a green stain on it. The same green as the ring mentioned in the notebook. Lynn knelt. Her hand trembled when she touched the lid. Knock. 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 The sound came from directly behind her. She turned. No one was there. Then she heard breathing. not her own. In the corner, behind a rotted board, something moved. Lynn shone the light there. A human hand reached out. She screamed. The hand pulled back. "Don't," a weak voice said. "Don't call him." It was not a ghost. It was a living person. Lynn rushed forward and pulled away the board. Behind it was a girl about 16 or 17, her hair tangled, her face lightly bruised, her lips dry and cracked. Her wrists were tied with plastic cord. "Oh my God." Lynn cut the cord with the small scissors from her tool pouch. "What's your name?" The girl shook. "Annie." "What are you doing here?" "I hid." "From who?" Annie looked over Lynn's shoulder, her eyes wide with terror. "The person with the key." From the passage behind them came the sound of heavy footsteps descending. Not children's steps. Adult shoes. Slow. Certain. Lynn switched off the flashlight. The hidden space fell into darkness. Annie covered her mouth to keep from crying. The footsteps stopped nearby. A flashlight beam swept across the passage. Henry's voice came low and shaking. "Lynn, if you're in there, come out." Lynn pressed Annie into the corner. Henry took one more step. The light stopped on the wooden chest. He went silent. Then he sighed. "I know you saw it." Lynn said nothing. "My family has guarded that chest for 3 generations," Henry said. "Not to hide a crime. To keep a promise." He knelt beside it. From his pocket, he took a small key. The lock opened. Inside the chest was no gold. No bones. No cursed object. Only records. Bundles of paper tied with string. Another notebook. And many old name tags. Henry lifted the notebook as if it were both sacred and poisonous. The girls who were rescued needed new names. New papers. They needed to disappear so no one could drag them back. Someone in this house hid the real list. If the list fell into the wrong hands, the old owners could find them. Later, their descendants did not want to know. His voice broke. But one record should never have been hidden. "Annie," Lynn whispered, "can you walk?" Henry froze. His flashlight swung toward her. Then toward Annie. His face changed. "That girl? You know her?" Henry did not answer. Annie shrank behind Lynn. "He didn't lock me down here," Annie said quickly. "He was looking for me. Someone else locked me in." "Who?" Lynn asked. Annie pressed her lips together. From above the passage came the sound of metal striking brick. Another man's voice called down. "Henry? Are you down there?" Lynn recognized the voice. Nolan Reyes. The contractor in charge of the renovation crew. She had met him the previous morning when he came to inspect the basement. Clean jacket, expensive shoes, polite smile, always talking about heritage preservation and community space optimization. Henry turned off his flashlight. But it was too late. Nolan had seen the light. He stepped down into the passage, holding a crowbar. "This place really was hard to find," he said. "I thought my old man made it up." Henry stood in front of the chest. "Leave." Nolan gave a small laugh. "I'm only taking what belongs to my family." "Your family lost any claim to it more than 100 years ago." "Claim?" Nolan spat. "You talk like those missionary women saved everyone. They hid people, changed names, rewrote papers. How is that different?" Henry lunged. Nolan swung the crowbar. Metal struck Henry's shoulder with a dry crack. He fell. Annie screamed. Lynn pulled Annie toward the passage, but Nolan blocked the way. "You're the one scanning documents, right?" he said to Lynn. "Have you sent any of them to anyone?" Lynn stepped back. "You locked Annie down here?" "The girl saw me open the wall. She shouldn't have been curious." "What are you trying to take from the chest?" Nolan looked at it. "One page. That's all. A page proving one girl never left this place. If that comes out, this building becomes a scandal. Donors pull away. The project stops. The property falls into other hands." "Your hands?" He smiled. "The living are always more practical than the dead." The moment he finished speaking, the sound of a sewing machine began behind Lynn. Tack, 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 tack. There was no sewing machine in the hidden space. But the sound grew louder. Then the footsteps began. Not one pair. Many. Running over brick. Running around them. Running inside the walls. Nolan swept his flashlight wildly. "Henry, what are you doing?" Henry lay on the floor, blood running from his forehead, but he smiled faintly. "I told you," he breathed. "This house is safe for people who do not come here with bad intentions." The brick walls around them began to knock. Nolan covered his ears. "Stop it." His flashlight flickered. In the flashing light, Lynn saw them. Small shadows filled the passage. No clear faces. No clear clothes. Only thin children standing in silence, hand in hand. In front of them stood the little girl with the braids. She looked at Nolan. Then she pointed at the crowbar. The metal in his hand turned red-hot, as if it had just been pulled from a furnace. He screamed and dropped it. Lynn seized the moment, grabbed Annie, and ran past him. Henry forced himself up and blocked Nolan's path. The three of them ran back through the hidden passage. Behind them, Nolan screamed. Then his scream was swallowed by the knocking. 3 knocks in every rhythm. Not fast. Not slow. Like a sentence being passed. The police arrived close to 3 in the morning. Annie was taken to the hospital. Henry needed 7 stitches and had a broken shoulder, but he lived. Nolan was found unconscious in the hidden space. A patch of hair at his temple had turned white. When he woke, he could only repeat one sentence, "Only 16. I counted only 16. No one understood. Only Lynn understood. Because she had heard the audio file. 16. No. It must be 17. Inside the chest, police and Cameron House leadership found many old records, most connected to changed names, protected identities, and the relocation of rescued girls. Some documents were too sensitive to release. Some were turned over to preservation specialists. The smallest notebook was the one Mrs. Maylau asked Lynn to scan in the presence of witnesses. "You came this far," Mrs. Lau said. "You should be the one to read it." Lynn did not want to. After everything that had happened, she wanted only to go home, take a long shower, sleep for 3 days, and never hear a scanner again. But when Mrs. Lau placed the notebook in front of her, Lynn knew the story was not finished. The notebook was small and covered in blue cloth. The edges were burned. On the first page, someone had written, "Names that must not be lost." Lynn turned the pages. Some names had been crossed out. Some had new names written beside them. Old name. New name. Destination. Receiving family. Condition after 1 year. After 2 years. After 5 years. Then she saw the initials. ML. Her heart stopped for 1 beat. Mel, approximately 8 years old, found inside the wall after the night of the fire. Lynn read on. Real name unknown. When frightened, knocks 3 times. Refuses to leave the sewing room. Says her mother is behind the blue door. The next line was blurred. Lynn leaned closer. New name given, May Lynn. Her throat went dry. May Lynn. Her grandmother's name had been Mai Lynn. Her family had always said it was only a Vietnamese name chosen later. She read the final line. 1917, transferred to Oakland with the Tran family. Safe. Do not trace. The archive room went silent. Mrs. Lau said nothing. Henry stood by the door, head lowered. Lynn turned the next page. A small photograph fell out. It showed a little girl with braided hair and an oversized long-sleeved shirt standing beside an older woman. Around the child's neck was a round jade pendant. Lynn reached for her own neck. The jade pendant her mother had left her was still there. Same shape. Same tiny crack on the edge. At last, Lynn understood what the little girl in the sewing room had meant. I am inside your name. She was not an outsider who had accidentally walked into the story. She was the reason the story had kept calling. Cameron House had not called a digital archivist to scan records. It had called family home. 1 week later, Lynn returned to the building in daylight. Annie was safe. Nolan had been arrested on charges connected to unlawful confinement, restricted area entry, and attempted destruction of historical records. The deeper and uglier parts of what he had been involved in were still under investigation. Henry took leave from work. Mrs. Lau kept arriving every morning with hot tea, as if nothing had happened. The blue door no longer appeared on the cameras. The passage behind the sewing room had been sealed off for professional inspection. The chest had been moved into preservation storage. But Lynn kept one thing with her for a while. A scan of the ML page. She printed it and placed it beside a photograph of her grandmother as a young woman. Her mother had once told her that her grandmother was terrified of knocking at night. Whenever she heard 3 knocks, she would ask, "Have they all been counted?" Back then, Lynn thought her grandmother was simply confused. Now she knew better. Before leaving Cameron House, Lynn went alone to the 2nd floor. The old sewing room door was open. Afternoon sunlight fell through the window and spread pale gold across the wooden floor. No sewing machine. No footsteps. No crying child. Lynn stood in the middle of the room and lifted the jade pendant from beneath her collar. "I know now," she whispered. "I will not let your name be lost." Wind slipped through the crack beneath the door. The red thread on the table moved slightly. From inside the wall came 3 very soft knocks. Not a plea for help. Not a warning. More like a greeting. Lynn smiled, her eyes burning. She turned toward the door. But just as her hand touched the knob, a different whisper sounded behind her. Not the little girl. Not Annie. Not her grandmother. It was the voice of a grown woman, very close to her ear.
Count again.
Lynn froze. The room went cold. Slowly, she turned her head. On the dusty table, where nothing had been a moment earlier, 17 small handprints had appeared. Beside them was an 18th handprint. Larger. Newer. Still wet. From downstairs, Mrs. Lau called up. "Lynn? Are you all right?" Lynn did not answer. Because on the wall in front of her, the old bricks had begun to bleed a line of black water. The water ran down and formed crooked words. Not English. Not Chinese. Vietnamese. There is still one person who has not been found. Lynn stepped back. Under the floor, small footsteps began to run around her. This time, they were not coming from the past. They were coming from directly beneath Cameron House. Very close. And still alive. Some buildings keep records in boxes. Others keep them in walls. Cameron House was built from brick, memory, and the names of people who were almost erased. But if Lynn Tran's story is true, the house did not only preserve the past. It guarded the missing. And somewhere beneath the old rooms on Sacramento Street, the counting may not be finished yet. If you ever walk past Cameron House after midnight, do not listen for footsteps above you. Listen below. And if you hear 3 knocks from behind the brick, do not answer too quickly. Because the house may not be asking who you are. It may be checking whether your name belongs on the list.
They say that at Blue Heron Lake, you should never answer a woman in white if she asks you one question: have you seen my baby? The story has lived around the water for more than a century. Some people say the mother only looked away for a moment, and the stroller rolled into the lake. Some say grief drove her into the water after her child. Others whisper something darker, that she pushed the baby under with her own hands, then spent the rest of her life and the rest of her death trying to take it back. I used to think it was just another local ghost story. See, a tale for night tours. A creepy little warning passed between teenagers after the paddle boats were pulled back to the dock, after the fog settled low over Strawberry Hill, after the surface of the lake turned black and still, like a mirror that no longer wanted to reflect the living. Then I heard a baby crying beneath the stone bridge. And then my mother disappeared in the exact same place. Blue Heron Lake is the new name of Stowe Lake in Golden Gate Park, San Francisco. The lake was officially renamed in 2024. The new name was inspired by the great blue herons that often nest near Strawberry Hill. The lake itself was created in 1893 to support boating, walking, and irrigation within the park. The most famous legend connected to this place is the White Lady of Stowe Lake, a woman dressed in white who is said to wander around the lake, asking passers-by if they have seen her baby. SF Gate notes that ghost stories in Golden Gate Park appeared in newspapers as early as 1908. But there is no confirmed record that a mother and baby truly died at the lake. Many old records were lost after the 1906 earthquake and fire. My name is Maya Tran. I was born in San Jose, raised in San Francisco, and for almost 10 years I worked as a home care nurse for elderly patients. My job was not dramatic. I changed bandages, checked blood pressure, prepared pills, cooked soft meals, and listened to people tell the stories of their lives once they knew they were running out of time. That was how I learned to understand silence. Old people often stay quiet for a long time before they say the thing that matters most. My mother was like that too. Her name was Lynn. She was 72 that year, and she had early-stage Alzheimer's. Some days she remembered the names of neighbors she had known decades earlier in Vietnam. Other days she forgot who I was, but she always remembered one lullaby. I had never heard her sing it when I was a child. It was strange, not quite Vietnamese, not quite English. It sounded like a song that had been soaked in water until the words blurred. Sleep, little one. The water is blue. The heron flies over. Mother is here. Every time she reached that line, she stopped. Her eyes would fix on something far away. Then she would ask, "Where is the baby girl?" At first I thought she meant me, but I was an only child. In every family photograph there was only me. No older sister, no younger sister, no second child half cropped out of the frame. I asked my father once, years before he died. He only gave me a tired smile and said, "Your mother dreams too much. Don't ask so many questions." When I was younger, I let that answer pass. When I got older, I understood something. In a family, the words "don't ask so many questions" are often the only door that leads to the truth. That fall, my mother's doctor advised me to take her outside more often. Gentle walks, sunlight, birds, familiar smells. He said the natural world could trigger memory in ways ordinary conversation could not. I chose Golden Gate Park because my mother used to like it. Or at least I thought she did. That morning, fog hung low in the trees. The path around Blue Heron Lake was damp and cold, and fallen leaves stuck to the pavement like pieces of old letters someone had torn up and left behind. My mother sat in her wheelchair with a gray wool blanket across her knees. She had not spoken since we left the house. Then she saw the lake. Her hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. Hard, her nails dug into my skin. "No," she said. "Mom, what is it? Don't go down there. We're just walking around the lake, that's all." She shook her head. Her eyes were wide. "It's under there." I looked toward the water. The surface was silver gray. A few ducks drifted quietly near the reeds. An overturned white boat rested by the dock. Across the water, Strawberry Hill rose through the fog. There was nothing under there. "What do you see?" I asked. She whispered, "The stroller." A chill went through me. "What stroller?" My mother turned toward me. For a few seconds, her eyes were completely clear. They were no longer the eyes of a woman slipping in and out of memory. They were sharp, wounded, and terrified. "Don't let her ask you." "Who?" She did not answer. From the lake, a baby began to cry. The sound was tiny, distant, as if it were rising through water. I froze. A jogger passed behind us and did not slow down. A young couple taking photos near the railing did not turn. Nobody else reacted. Only I heard it. And my mother. She began to tremble. "Take me home," she said. "Maya, take me home now." It was the first time in months that she had used my name correctly. That night, my mother did not sleep. Around 2 in the morning, I heard her moving around in her room. When I opened the door, I found her kneeling in front of the closet, pulling old boxes down onto the floor. "Mom, what are you doing?" She did not look at me. "You have to give it back." "Give what back?" She dragged out a small tin box. The corners were rusted, and a strip of old tape on the lid said L, 1978. I had never seen it before. My mother held it against her chest as if she were holding a child. "The baby is so cold," she said. I sat down beside her. "Mom, who is the baby?" She stared at me for a long time. Then she opened the box. Inside were several old photographs, a yellowed hospital bracelet for an infant, a piece of cloth embroidered with a bird, and a folded newspaper clipping. I picked up the first photograph. My mother was in it, much younger, standing beside Stowe Lake, the old name for Blue Heron Lake. Her hair was long. She wore a beige coat. Her face was beautiful but tense. My father stood beside her, also young. His eyes turned slightly away from the camera. Between them was a stroller. Inside the stroller was a baby girl. The baby's face was blurred by the age of the photograph, but there was a tiny silver bracelet on her wrist. It matched the bracelet in the tin box. I could not breathe. "Mom," I said, "who is this?" She touched the photograph. "Anne." I had never heard that name in our house. "Who is Anne?" My mother began to cry. Not loudly. The tears just slipped down her face, silent and helpless. She was supposed to live. The newspaper clipping was from a tiny column. The print had faded, but I could still make out a few words. "Possible infant remains reported near lake area in Golden Gate Park. Police unable to confirm after initial search." There was no name, no conclusion. Only a small piece of news swallowed by time. My throat tightened. "You had another child?" She nodded. "My sister?" She closed her eyes. "Not your sister." I stared at her. "What does that mean?" My mother opened her eyes. In the weak yellow light of the bedside lamp, her face looked drained of blood. "Maya," she said, "there were 2 of you." I did not sleep for the rest of the night. After my mother cried herself unconscious in the chair, I sat on the floor with the photograph spread around me. I stared at the stroller in that picture until my eyes burned. I had a twin. It was impossible. I had lived 38 years without knowing. There was no birth certificate in the family file that said it. No birthday picture with 2 babies. No accidental story from an aunt. No baby clothes saved in pairs. The next morning, I called my Aunt Mai, my mother's younger sister and the only surviving person on her side of the family. She was quiet for a long time after I asked about Anne. Finally, she sighed. "Your mother told you? So it's true?" "Yes." "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because your mother forbade it."
How did Anne die?
My aunt did not answer right away. I heard the television murmuring at the other end of the line. Then I heard her turn it off. "Your family had just started to settle in San Francisco. Your parents were young, broke, and overwhelmed. Your mother gave birth to twins. You were the weaker one. Anne was stronger. But after a few months, everything became difficult."
Difficult how?
"Your mother had postpartum depression, severe. People in our community did not understand it then. They only said she was weak, that she did not know how to be a mother. I gripped the phone. Then what happened? One day your mother took both babies to Stowe Lake. When she came home, she had only you. My heart struck hard against my ribs. What did she tell the police? She said the stroller rolled away. She said Anne fell into the water, but no body was found. No body? No. Then why did everyone believe Anne was dead? Aunt Mai lowered her voice. Because your mother kept repeating one sentence. I let go. I stood frozen in the kitchen. Outside the window, morning fog clung to the glass. A bird sat on the power line, watching the house as if it were listening. Do you think Mom killed Anne? I asked. The silence on the line was worse than any answer. Finally, my aunt said, I think your mother sentenced herself that day. As for the truth, maybe only the lake knows. After that, my mother began to change. She spoke to empty corners of the room. She set an extra bowl of rice porridge at the dinner table. She folded baby clothes out of old hand towels. One night, I woke to the sound of dripping water. I checked the sinks, the bathroom, the washing machine. Everything was dry, but in front of my mother's bedroom door, the wood floor was wet with small footprints. A child's footprints. I did not want to believe it. After years as a nurse, I knew exhaustion could invent sounds. Grief could turn shadows into people. A loved one's broken memory could infect your own mind if you listened too closely. But the water on the floor was real. I wiped it up with a towel. It was as cold as water pulled from the bottom of a lake. 3 days later, my mother disappeared. I woke at 5 in the morning and found the front door slightly open. Her coat was missing from the hook. Her soft walking shoes were gone. On the kitchen table sat the tin box, open. Anne's silver bracelet was missing. I knew where she had gone. I drove to Golden Gate Park feeling as if I had forgotten how to breathe. The city at dawn was gray and wet. The streetlights were still on. The empty roads looked abandoned after some quiet evacuation. When I reached Blue Heron Lake, the fog was so thick I could only see a few yards ahead. I called out, "Mom!" No one answered. I ran along the path beside the water. Thin branches scraped my coat. Mud splashed my shoes. The lake beside me was silent, black, and flat. Then I heard singing. Sleep, little one. The water is blue. My mother's voice. I followed it to the stone bridge leading toward Strawberry Hill. Beneath the bridge, my mother stood at the edge of the water. She was wearing her nightgown under her coat. Her gray hair hung loose around her shoulders. In one hand, she held the infant bracelet. "Mom!" She turned. "Maya, don't come closer." I slowed down. "Give me the bracelet, we'll go home." She shook her head. "I can't, I've kept it too long." "You are not guilty." I said it out of instinct. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I was not sure. My mother looked at me. Her eyes were full of pain. "You don't know what I did. Then tell me." Fog rolled between us. A child's laugh echoed from beneath the bridge. Not crying, laughing. My skin prickled. My mother turned sharply toward the water. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't call her." From under the bridge, a stroller appeared. It floated on the lake. Old, black, rusted at the wheels. Its torn canopy hung in wet strips. It moved without making ripples, as if the water itself refused to touch it. I could not move. From inside the stroller came the soft scrape of fingernails. Tap, 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 tap. My mother began to cry. "N." I grabbed her hand. "Mom, look at me. That isn't real." Then a tiny hand reached out of the stroller. The skin was pale and wrinkled, as if it had been underwater too long. The hand pointed at me. A child's voice whispered. Mother chose her. I let go of my mother's hand, not because I wanted to, because my body reacted before my mind could stop it. My mother looked at me, and in her eyes I saw a truth more terrible than fear. "Maya," she said, "I'm sorry." "Sorry for what?" She stepped backward toward the lake. "That day I didn't drown Anne." My throat closed. "Then what happened?" She looked down at the bracelet. "I drowned you." At first, I did not understand. Every sound around me seemed to stretch. Birds, leaves, water, my own breathing. What did you say? She sobbed. I couldn't take it anymore. 2 babies crying all day. No sleep, no help. The voice in my head said if only one of them would be quiet, everything would stop. I took both of you to the lake. I don't know how long I walked. I only remember the cold water. I remember you crying weaker than Anne, and then She could not finish. The ground seemed to disappear beneath me. You tried to drown me? She nodded. But I'm alive, because Anne pulled you back. I looked at the stroller. The scraping inside had stopped. My mother spoke one word at a time, as if each one had to be torn out of her lungs. I put you in the water, only for a few seconds. I swear it was only a few seconds. Then Anne screamed. She twisted in the stroller. She fell. I panicked and pulled you out first because you were already blue. When I turned back, Anne was gone. I stepped away from her. The air felt thick as mud. You saved me first. No, she said. I chose you first. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. All my life, I thought I had been an only child. The truth was worse. I was the child saved after I had almost been killed. And Anne, the stronger baby, the innocent one, the one whose scream had snapped my mother back into herself, had gone under while my mother held me. You told everyone the stroller rolled away, I whispered. I lied. Because you were afraid of prison? She shook her head. Because I was afraid you would grow up knowing you lived in the space where your sister died. I looked at her. Her face was no longer the face of a sick old woman. It was the face of the young woman in the photograph. Exhausted, terrified, locked forever inside a moment she could never undo. Beneath the bridge, the stroller turned slowly. The child's voice came again. Mother chose her. My mother stepped into the water. I lunged forward and grabbed her sleeve. The lake swallowed my shoes. The cold shot up my legs and into my bones. Mom, don't. She turned back, tears and fog on her face. I heard her every night, every time you laughed, every time you called me Mom. Behind you, I heard Anne asking, "What about me? Stay with me, please." She looked at me for a long time. Then she said the words that hurt more than anything else. Maya, I never left this lake. The silver bracelet slipped from her fingers. It touched the surface but did not sink. From beneath the lake, another tiny hand rose and received it. My mother smiled. Not happily. It was the smile of someone who had finally stopped resisting. Then she tore her arm free. I fell into the mud. She took one more step. The water reached her knees, then her waist. I scrambled after her. Mom! The fog thickened. All I could see was the shape of her coat. Then that shape bent forward as if she were lifting a child. A woman's voice, much younger than my mother's, whispered beside my ear. Have you seen my baby? I turned. A woman in white stood on the bank. Her long hair was soaked. Her arms hung at her sides. Fog hid her face. But I knew her. Not my 72-year-old mother, my mother at 26. The woman from that day. I stood frozen in the water. She asked again, "Have you seen my baby?" I did not know how to answer. The legend said that if you answered yes, she would follow you. If you answered no, she would kill you. But the legend had never said what to do when the child she was searching for was the person standing in front of her. I looked down at the lake. In the black water, I saw a reflection that did not belong to me. 2 infant girls lay side by side. One had her eyes open. One had her eyes closed. Then the one with open eyes lifted her hand from below the surface and touched my face. For the first time, I heard Anne clearly. You've lived long enough for both of us. I woke on the shore after sunrise. A man in a rowboat found me unconscious near the stone bridge. My shoes and pants were soaked. My hands were packed with mud. Police came. Rescue workers searched the lake. They did not find my mother. No body. No second set of footprints. Nothing except me. When I told them my mother had walked into the water, a young officer looked at me with careful sympathy. He asked whether my mother had dementia. I said yes. He wrote that down for a long time. No one mentioned a woman in white. No one mentioned a stroller. No one mentioned a crying baby. 3 days later, the search ended. My mother was listed as missing, presumed drowned. Aunt Mai flew up from Los Angeles. She hugged me at the front door and cried without making a sound. When I told her what my mother had said, she sat down hard in a chair, shaking. "No," she whispered. "You knew about this." "Not like that." I stared at her. She took an old envelope from her purse. "Your mother gave this to me years ago. She said if you ever asked about Anne, I should give it to you." Inside the envelope was a hospital record. I read it. Patient, Lynn Tran. Date, September 1978. Number of infants, 2 female babies. Post-delivery status, baby A, living. Baby B, deceased after 11 minutes due to respiratory failure. I read the paper again and again. "Baby B died at the hospital," I said. Aunt Mai nodded. "Anne died right after birth?" "Yes." "Then who was the baby at the lake?" My aunt looked down at her hands. "There was no baby who died at the lake." I stood. "You told me she took 2 babies there and came home with one. I told you the story your mother forced the family to believe. But the truth is that after Anne died, your mother could not accept it. She kept saying the hospital had taken the wrong baby, that the dead child was not hers, that Anne was still somewhere." I felt sick. "The stroller? It was yours, but in her mind there were always 2 babies, one in the stroller, one in her arms. In the lake?" Aunt Mai closed her eyes. "One day she took you to Stowe Lake. She stood by the water for a long time. When police found her, she was holding you. You were wet but alive. She kept saying she had let go. Nobody knew what she had let go of, or who, because Anne was already dead." The room tilted around me. "So Mom thought she killed Anne?" "No," my aunt said softly. "She thought she had saved the wrong child." I sat down. Every piece of the story shifted. Anne had not died in the lake. Anne had died before she had a life at all. But my mother had carried that death to Blue Heron Lake, placed it on the water, and fed it with guilt for almost 40 years. "Then what is in the lake?" I asked. Aunt Mai did not answer. She looked out the window. Across the street, on the damp strip of grass, a great blue heron stood perfectly still, as if it were waiting. After my mother's memorial, I began to dream of water. Every night, I stood on the stone bridge at Blue Heron Lake. Fog covered the surface. A baby cried below. Far away, a woman in white pushed a stroller around the shore. Whenever I called Mom, she did not turn. Whenever I called Anne, the crying stopped. Then the lake opened. Below the water was a hospital room. White light. 2 infant bassinets. One empty. One holding me. At the foot of the bed, my young mother knelt with a wet bundle in her arms. I would wake with my hair soaked. Not sweat, water. After a week of that, I went back to Blue Heron Lake, not because I was brave, because I had no other way to sleep. I brought my mother's tin box, the photographs, the hospital record, and a bouquet of white flowers. I went in the late afternoon when visitors were starting to leave the park. The paddle boats were tied to the dock. The smell of mud, dead leaves, and cold water rose from the lake. I walked to the stone bridge, the place where my mother had vanished. I laid the flowers down. "Mom," I said, "I know now." No answer came. Wind moved through the branches. I opened the tin box and took out the cloth embroidered with the bird. On the back, I noticed a line of writing I had never seen before. It was not my mother's handwriting. It was my father's. "Don't let Lynn return to the lake. It isn't looking for the child. It is looking for the guilty." The cold went straight up my spine. My father had known. He had known something lived at the lake. I pulled out the old photographs and looked at them again. The picture of my parents and the stroller beside the water. This time I looked closer. My mother stood beside the stroller. My father stood on the left. But behind them, near the waterline, there was a woman in white. Her face was blurred, as if someone had scratched it away from the photograph. Her hand rested on my mother's shoulder. I dropped the picture. A man's voice spoke behind me. "You see her too?" I spun around. A man in his 60s stood a few steps away. He wore an old park jacket and a knit cap. In one hand, he carried a paper bag of birdseed. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to frighten you. Who are you?" "Elias. I used to work at the boathouse when I was young, before the place changed so much." He looked at the white flowers, then at the tin box. "Did someone in your family die here?" "My mother." Elias nodded slowly. "Did she hear the baby?" I did not answer. He sighed. "Then she did." I stepped closer. "What do you know about this lake?" Elias looked out over the water. "No one knows everything, but people who work here long enough learn one thing. The white lady's story is wrong." "Wrong how?" "People think she is one mother who lost one child. I think she is what happens when enough mothers believe they lost a child because of their own sin." I said nothing. He continued. "This lake is strange. Grief comes here and stays. Over the years it piles up. A mother who lost a baby, a mother who abandoned one, a mother who wished, for one terrible second, that a child would stop crying. All that sorrow becomes the same white shape." I looked at the water. "So my mother, maybe a ghost did not take her. Maybe she followed her own guilt. Can I bring her back?" Elias looked at me for a long time. "There is one way." I waited. He said, "Someone has to tell the truth in the place where the lie began." I looked down at the photograph. "My mother lied that Anne died here." "Then you have to say the opposite." "To whom?" Elias pointed toward the stone bridge. "To whoever is still asking." At that moment, the sound of stroller wheels creaked beneath the bridge. Elias went pale. "You should leave before dark." But it was already too late. Fog began to rise from the lake. I stood alone under the stone bridge as the sun disappeared behind the trees. Elias was gone, or I thought he was. When I turned around, there were no footprints where he had stood on the damp ground. I held the hospital record in my hand. My voice shook so badly that the first sentence almost broke apart. "Anne did not die here." The lake stayed silent. "Anne died at the hospital. My mother did not drown her. My mother did not save the wrong child. She was just a woman in so much pain that she could not accept one of her daughters had left before she could even be called by name." The fog curled inward. I heard a lullaby. Not my mother's voice this time. Hundreds of women's voices layered together around the lake, distant and trembling. "Sleep, little one. Please stop crying. Mother is sorry. I did not mean it." Then the woman in white appeared at the water's edge. She was tall and thin, just as the old stories described. Her wet dress clung to her body. Her long hair hid most of her face. Her arms reached forward as if she wanted to hold an invisible child. I wanted to run, but I thought of my mother. I thought of the life she had lived like a sentence. I thought of Anne, a baby who had not even had time to become a memory, yet had been turned into a punishment for almost 40 years. The white lady asked, "Have you seen my baby?" I swallowed. Then I answered, "No." Her head snapped upward. The air went so cold it stabbed my chest. From the water, dozens of small hands reached for the stones. Babies began to cry all across the lake. I shouted, "Because you are not looking for a baby, you are looking for guilt." The white lady stood still. I held up the hospital record. "Anne is not here. My mother's child is not here. None of your children are here. Only guilt is here." The woman tilted her head. For the first time, I saw her face. It was not one face. It was many faces layered on top of one another. My mother's face. The face of the woman from the legend. The faces of mothers I had never known. Their eyes were empty, but tears streamed from all of them. I whispered, "Give my mother back." The lake trembled. The stroller rose out of the fog. There was no baby inside, only my mother's coat and a small notebook. I stepped into the water and took the notebook. The white lady remained at the edge of the lake. She asked again, quieter now, "Have you seen my baby?" This time I said, "Yes." The fog stopped moving. I continued, "But not under the water. Your child is in the moment before you condemned yourself, in the place where you still loved them, in the place before you turned grief into a curse." The woman opened her mouth. The sound that came out was not a scream, it was a breath, the first breath after too many years. Then she dissolved into fog. One by one, the little hands withdrew beneath the surface. The crying faded. On the far side of the bridge, I saw my mother. She stood in her wet coat, gray hair loose around her face. In her arms, she held a bundle wrapped in white. "Mom." She looked at me. This time, her eyes were peaceful. She bent down, kissed the bundle, and placed it in the stroller. The stroller drifted by itself toward the center of the lake. My mother did not follow it. She stayed where she was, looking at me. Her lips moved. I could not hear her voice, but I could read the words, "Live on." Then she vanished. She did not sink. She was not pulled under. She only faded, like fog when the sun rises. I fell to my knees on the shore. In my hand was my mother's small notebook. The first page contained only one sentence. Maya did not live instead of An. Maya lives for both of them. I did not tell the police the whole story. No one would have believed me. I only said that I had found my mother's coat near the lake. Her disappearance remained without a body, but after a few months, our family was allowed to hold a memorial. I scattered my mother's ashes somewhere else, not at Blue Heron Lake. I chose a small garden overlooking the ocean, where the wind blew too strongly for any memory to stand still for long. Then I moved out of the old house. Before I left, I hung the embroidered cloth with the heron in the window. Every morning, sunlight passed through it and cast the shadow of the bird on the floor. I began to live more lightly. Not because the grief vanished, because I stopped confusing grief with guilt. 1 year later, I returned to Blue Heron Lake. It was spring. Visitors crossed the water in paddle boats. Children ran along the path. A great blue heron stood motionless near the reeds, its long neck curved, its bright eye patient, as if it understood things human beings spent their whole lives trying to learn. The stone bridge was still there. The surface of the lake was still silver gray. But I did not hear crying anymore. I placed one white flower at the edge of the water. Not for the white lady, not for the legend, for everyone who had ever stood beside water holding something they could not repair, and called it fate. As I turned to leave, a little girl about 4 years old stood on the path watching me. She wore a pale blue dress. Her wet hair clung to her cheek. Around her wrist was a tiny silver bracelet. I froze. The girl smiled. It was not frightening. It was not sad. It was simply the smile of a child who had finally found her way home. She lifted her hand and waved. Then she ran toward a woman waiting beneath the trees. The woman wore a beige coat. Her hair was long and black. Her face was young. My mother. She lifted the girl into her arms. This time she did not ask whether I had seen her child. Because she had, I blinked. Both of them vanished among the people walking by the lake. I stood there for a long time. Then a man's voice spoke behind me. "First time here?" I turned. A middle-aged tourist held a camera in both hands and looked confused. He pointed toward the stone bridge. I thought I heard a woman asking something. "Did you hear that?" I looked at him. A soft wind moved across the water. There was no crying baby, no stroller, no white dress. Only birds, water, and small boats tapping gently against the dock. I smiled. "No," I said, "it's peaceful here." He nodded and walked on. I turned back to the lake one last time. A blue-gray feather drifted slowly beneath the shadow of the bridge, and somewhere far away, or very near, I heard my mother's lullaby. No longer twisted, no longer wet and cold, only a mother's ordinary song. Sleep, little one. Mother is here. So if you ever walk beside Blue Heron Lake after the boats have been tied up and the fog begins to rise, listen carefully. You may hear water tapping under the stone bridge. You may hear a stroller wheel creak where no stroller should be. And if a woman in white asks whether you have seen her baby, do not answer too quickly. Some ghosts are not searching for the dead. Some ghosts are searching for the moment when they stopped forgiving themselves.